Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Best in the West, the LEC show that talks about all the games that were played in the weekend prior and analyze them. We're going to discuss all the teams, a couple of the matches. We're going to show some clips to show you exactly what we mean when we're talking about things. My name is Tom Matisse, and I'm joined here again by my co-host, Veteran. How are you doing? We just had the first week of the LEC, a super weekend as well. So 3 match days. It was a long weekend. How are you feeling about it?
I mean, uh, it's this is a league of pretty big contrasts now, right? Like, there's a big separation between the top teams and the bottom teams.
It's
I
obviously
don't know
it's
how
just
I
week
feel
one.
about that
It's just week
internationally.
one. It's just week one.
Yeah,
So,
true,
yeah.
true. I mean, I will say if it wasn't for the MSI performances, I'd be a lot more worried, right? Because I've been worried we've been getting worse every split for a while.
Okay.
But it does feel to me like other regions must also have it pretty bad. So, I just remind myself of that every single time.
Yeah. I've caught a few games of every major region at least at this point,
Mm.
and the only region I find entertaining at this point where I think okay they're probably in good shape heading into Worlds is China. But then again, it's a very safe bet
Mm.
to say that China is going to be very good heading into Worlds because they always do very well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even if they end up like playing bad there, they'll probably still play better than everyone else. So it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And it wasn't even like the year that Damwon won. The other three teams were China because we had top esports there, we had Suning there, and JDG. No, not JDG. Who did Damwon play in the? Oh, they played T1. No, hang on. Who did they play when Damwon won Worlds in the semifinal?
uh,
Was it
all
G2?
that in the semis.
Yeah,
In the
it was
semis, I
G2.
think it was G2. Yeah,
Yeah, it
it was
was
G2.
G2
Yes, G2 won against Samsung, no, in the quarters, and it was just a straight stomp.
against
And
Gen G.
then they
Yeah,
beat.
3-0 because
Yeah,
yeah, I remember this.
I
Yeah.
still call
Oh.
them Samsung. Actually, that's how old
You're
I am.
probably one of the only people who does that actually, because as somebody who came in like after they changed
Hmm.
to Gen
Sure.
G, it's just Gen
Oh
G to me.
man,
And I don't
I'm one
think
of those people now.
yeah, I also don't think that many people would associate the brand with Samsung very actively because it was such a big overhaul. But anyway, back to the LEC. We had our super week, and just to give people a bit of a refresher of what the standings are at the moment. G2 is the only team that went 3-0. Then we have 5 teams who went 2-1. That's Fnatic, Mad Lions, Astralis. Hell yes, it's Astralis on the up and up. Vitality, XL. Then we have 2 teams 1 and 2. It's Rogue and SK, and 2 teams as well that are 0 and 3. Misfits and BDS. So I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to start at the top? Do you want to start at the bottom teams? Do you want to pick with somebody in the middle? Because 15 games over the weekend, as you said, it was very long. As also somebody who was in the studio, I could feel that, okay, day one, everybody was excited. LEC is back,
Hmm.
audience is back in the studio. Second day, all right, it's the day with the match of the week, super hype as well. And day 3, it was just deflated. I don't know. It was the heat in Berlin because it was like 37 degrees in Berlin. It was terrible.
Oh god, yeah.
Even though they have air conditioning in the studio, so if you plan on visiting, don't worry about that. But, or it was just maybe it was the long weekend that kept people down. But yeah, like like whereas a kill would get like active cheers on day 1 and 2, on day 3 it was literally somebody get a kill. It's like a courtesy clap for the people playing on stage. But overall, though, very enjoyable, very good to be back. But yeah, where do you want to start? Is there any team
I
that you
mean, I don't want to start with any particular team actually.
sure?
I want to start with lamenting the death of jungle in Europe because it's really clear. This is something I've been arguing for a while. Is that we're gradually entering a state where junglers are progressively losing the argument, right? And
Okay.
franchising definitely helps speed this along because the idea that there's such a benefit by having huge big name players on your team brand wise, and that there are players that are essentially carrying your value,
Mm.
that's a big deal. And odds on, just straight 4 out of 5 times, that's going to be a laner of something, right? So this sped along a process that was already beginning. You already were in a position where, no offense to any of the people that you're about to think about when I say this, a lot of the more verbose junglers were generally the junglers that were able to get stuff done. And that's because as a jungler, players aren't perfect, right? Players don't generally understand that much outside of their lane, their role, the champions that they play. They don't spend all of their time watching VODs trying to get a complete understanding of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why you hear arguments that a lot of them should off-roll. Um, laners trying to tell junglers what to do will always tell them what to do from the perspective of their own lanes and what's best for them and how they think the win conditions, which for them are invariably going to be their lane, should play out. And so what you end up with is, even in metas where jungle-centric, farm-centric junglers should be the thing, you end up with junglers that aren't doing efficient pathing. You know, the junglers that you'll see a lot of big analysts just clawing their hair about, because there are plenty of more efficient paths they should be doing, but they're not. They seem to just be spam ganking, escorting when there's no need to,
right?
Just hovering, basically clearly playing for laners.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really surprising to me is that right now, after the durability change, it's patently obvious to me, and I've seen this brought up by other analysts as well, that champions like Kindred, Karthus, Lilia, even champs like Udyr, should be meta right now and should be the go-to junglers. And these are junglers that you want to pivot your game around. You want your laners to be playing to defend jungle and to defend jungle priority. You don't want to be making perpetual dives if it sacrifices camps and economies on your jungler. But yeah, this split, well, this weekend, we only saw one Lilia pick, and that's it. Otherwise, it's this Viego default, this Xin Zhao default.
Wukong is very much picked.
Wukong's very, very picked. I prefer that over others just because I can see why with the durability changes you do that. And I think in draft you can also triple flex it. I'm not sure which teams can. I know, for example, Mad Lions can easily flex it. They have armor in top side. And we've seen them do Wukong bot before in the past as a counter pick. But outside of that, like, I see Volibear, Viego, Xin Zhao immediately after. And that to me is just, we're playing very lane-centric games. And I don't think that's what you should do. But the junglers are trying to 1v4, and inevitably there'll be some player more valuable than them that they're arguing against. And that player will get the ear of the coaches, and they'll get the ear of the managers. And eventually you're in this position where you have Haru and Bo on your team and Selfmade just out. So the junglers are losing the argument, right? After this weekend, I think they've just fucking lost the argument in general.
Right.
And I find that quite sad, because we had a really good jungle pool a few years back, and now even the really good junglers seem to be stuck in this lane-centric bam ganking style.
Right, but is that something that is seen all around the world then? Because if I very quickly just think of you know, like, I don't recall seeing a lot of Udyr play specifically in LPL or LCK either.
I can't speak internationally. I don't watch international games. I like to tell people I watch 6 regions and they're all European, you know? So I don't think it translates internationally. Oddly enough, the only other place that I'm watching avidly is actually NA Amateur and Academy, because I actually do casts for there right now. I actually have a cast schedule later tonight after this recording. And I have seen some of them do Karthus picks, Kindred picks, blah, blah, blah. Because there are some junglers out there that do basically just one-trick farming junglers to challenger, and in amateur, you're more likely to be able to win the argument in that regard.
Okay. So I just quickly took a look at LPL at this point, and they've obviously been playing a bit longer. There have been 45 Viego picks. It's the most picked champion, and 20 Wukong, 16 Lee Sin, 7 Graves, then 6 Trundle, then it's, you know, threes and twos of Vi, Talia, Diana, you know, like there's Kindred, Kha'Zix even in there twice. So also still a lot of Viego and a lot of Wukong there.
Yeah, I mean, the Graves players are the ones that are living the sweet life where they're actually able to win the argument. The rest of them, I assume, are under very similar pressures to what European players are under. I'm not an expert on LPL, LCK, etc., but, you know, it's weird to say this, but economically speaking, I would assume the same pressures exist, right? Odds on they're going to be brand name players, big name players that have been, I don't like to say recycled, but big name players that have been kept on for long periods of time, and they're more likely to win the argument because they're more likely to have the backing of the org around them, right? At the end of the day, they're going to be more worried if, I'm not saying, like, I mean, I'm not going to name any specific players. They're going to be more worried if, like, X mid laner is having an issue rather than if this jungler is having an issue, right? You know, that's just odds on going to happen.
Sure. On the flip side of jungle maybe be suffering a lot, what I very much enjoyed seeing was a large diversity in bot lane champions being played. Now that obviously might fizzle out as the weeks progress and people figure out which champions you should be playing. But it's actually the most diverse role over the course of the LEC weekend with 16,
Oh, it is, yeah.
16 different picks. Zeri is the most popular. Then we have Ezreal, but we've seen Twitch, Kalista. There was a Tahm Kench being played. Obviously, that's in combination with the Senna. Kai'Sa, Swain, bot, Sion. I'm as a Veigar main was very excited to see Kobe play Veigar, and it did very well as well. So bring me all that hopium for more Veigar in the bot lane heading forward. But that actually was a big surprise to me because generally speaking, if I think back of the spring split, it was so monotone. It was Jinx and Aphelios.
Yes.
So we didn't see a whole lot of diversity there. But now, at least for now, it's very different.
Yeah, I mean, the durability changes favoured bruisers, tanks, and therefore also favoured anti-tanks and also shield-based champions, right? Because the resistances will carry through in that regard. Which made Senna an extremely high priority. Very strong PTA abuser, shielder, everything basically, what have you. And a good response to that is, for example, the Twitch. I was thinking another good response is the Vayne, but we're yet to see that. Zeri is literally a bruiser. Ezreal can pivot in towards bruiser-centric builds, right? So these are also champions that have grown up in popularity with those durability changes, and Twitch is a strong counter to both of them as well. And so is Vayne. Kalista, it's really quite obvious why she would be picked in the durability meta. We're now talking about anti-tanks and those Bork changes that came in, right? Draven was then picked quite commonly as a response into Kalista, is also a viable response into stuff like Ezreal, right? Obviously, Veigar can control stuff like Zeri, and can kind of control stuff like Kalista too. So
it also blows up everybody in the late game, so it's just
I mean, a series of responses to the fact that you need to have a certain kind of damage, and there are also certain kinds of champions that are favored with just that durability change, just increase this diversity. Whereas last season, it's like, basically what we need is consistent damage. So then you just look at what the longest range champ is that can do the most damage, and that's Jinx. So after the first 6 weeks, everyone was just like, screw it, Jinx, 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 Jinx. Or Aphelios, which can beat Jinx in lane and do damage as well. So it's like Jinx, Aphelios, Jinx, Aphelios, Jinx, and what else are you really going to go? Like, you just need range and you need damage. Now, if you're more of a bruiser, you don't necessarily need that range, right? You can trade a lot more HP than you could before, or you can spend a lot more time losing HP, is probably better to say, than before to output your damage, right? So Zeri's favoured, so then what's good into Zeri, so blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I like the pool. This is actually a signal of how healthy the durability patch is, right? I'm actually of the opinion these days that it was a healthy thing to do.
Well, some people before the LEC, because I watched some LCK and I watched some LPL, were saying, okay, they were fearing that maybe it would be a bit boring, and I think the games, to me, also on many occasions felt a bit quieter in terms of like how much was happening. But then I look at the average game time, and it's basically similar to what we saw in spring. Now, I'm not sure if that is because teams just don't know how to play in this meta yet, or if some other teams are better at punishing. Obviously, G2 had very quick games in the weekend, so they'll be taking that average a bit down. But overall, I'm also a big in favor of the durability patch. I think it just makes it more interesting, but it still felt that some games took a bit longer. I'm not sure how you experience that, or what your take on that is.
There were definitely games that felt longer. I think a lot
aside from the SK BDS 44-minute nightmare.
Well, it's in a. I mean, obviously with a durability patch, if a single person is caught out, you have to get caught out in a pretty astronomical way right now for it to be a completely game-losing catch, right? So you'll often see times where a catch happens and it simply delays a oncoming team fight, because the guy doesn't just get one shot immediately by like Zed or something, right? Very few things are getting Tommy 2-tap these days. And you also have so much mobility on like these AD carries, which are very often the important ones to get out, that it's normally quite difficult to grab those game-winning catches. Obviously, you can still see the impact that a bad macro decision can make. but that's normally happening with teams being far too insistent on flipping these neutral objectives, right? Like it was Rogue Fnatic, right? Where Rogue, who was Rogue against? Where they literally just like the last team fight was fine. It was SK.
Mad Lions, you mean, in the
It
end?
was mad.
Yeah.
Okay,
With
well, yeah, was
with
that
the
at the
Elder
end there
Drake.
with the Elder? Yes. It was yellow. You know, they're colours to me.
Sure.
It was a yellow team of some kind. Yeah. So that would be an example. Basically, any BDS game is an example of being too insistent on neutrals, but we'll get into that soon.
Yep.
So given that the critical fights are happening there, because it's harder to make a critical fight happen over a pick, that's presumably why you're seeing games go faster. I think G2 would be a bit of an exception to that, because the way that they're using the current meta is to accentuate their heavy top priority that they were already leaning into. We talked about this in our tier list last split.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can lean into Broken Blade with a Senna, for example, right? So maybe you're chilling right now against a Modo, but then when Senna presses this Yon's just like, he can do whatever the hell he wants, you know? And that's perfect for playstyle of G2.
Yeah.
And then they just keep pushing that tempo, you know? So I'd expect them not to have as long games, because they play a wider map state with these compositions and more squishy champs. So.
Yep. All right. Well, shall we just get into the first team that we want to discuss then? Let's go with G2. Why not? They went 3-0. I did an interview with Dylan Falco before the split, and he told me, even though they weren't going to take it calmer in terms of, they still wanted to win this game, he didn't expect his team to be at the peak yet. And then they went 3-0. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you play at your peak, but they at least made a very good argument of why they are still the best in the region, beating Rogue, beating Astralis, and beating XL. Now maybe those last two might not be seen too impressive, but in the end, XL and Astralis also both went 2-1. So
True.
Yeah, the
Astralis 2022 Summer Champions.
Yeah, they are. For me, the game against Rogue from G2 stood out most because they had such a fun draft with the Diana Yasuo again, which they very much like playing, of course. But overall, yeah, I mean,
God.
they just seemed very, very solid overall, and just the team that we kind of expected G2 to be as, I guess, Spring Split champions. Very decisive in what they wanted to do. How do you feel about G2?
I mean, it was very difficult to see Rogue's options even coming in from draft here, and I'm not normally one to like super harp on about draft, but here I kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those games where I thought Vayne becomes a perfect pick. Senna's big weaknesses are lockdown and all-in. Mm-hmm. Vayne is a champion that has heavy all-in, and you can pair her with elements of lockdown as well. I think once you've seen Senna, Yone, Swain in draft, you know that you have multiple champions Vayne's effective into. When it comes to like Yasuo, Diana, Yone combos, Vayne's E is very good against those champions individually. Obviously, if it comes to a group situation, there's a bit more that you have to think about, but you just pivot the game in a different manner. Yeah. This is one of those scenarios where I think going for something like Ashe instead of Aphelios on fourth pick red side, mm-hmm. I think that would be better. And then flexing that into support and going last pick Vayne when they lock Yasuo, Diana, that would be the play for me there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you have a very easy laning phase into good lockdown on the Senna, mm-hmm. and Vayne has a really good time against a lot of the champions there. But then I ended up seeing, like, for example, LS thinks you end up going Taric there as a last pick, but I think even his tweet way saying that he's accepting that, like, this, after that Aphelios is locked
you cut out for a little bit. Could you repeat that?
oh, sorry. I'm saying like
Taric.
Ellis was saying Taric last pick, but I think even in that he was accepting that it's very difficult after the Aphelios pick to do something in draft here. I'd argue even after the Silas pick, it's already quite difficult to do something in draft here. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they go straight for blind top plus Wukong when you could just respond to the Senna pick with something that could match it, right? Already at that point. Mm-hmm. Rather than reveal two lanes that can then get counterpicked. Like they didn't put themselves in a good winning position here at all. I could understand not wanting to do Azir here just because they already have the Yone. Mm-hmm. But I really liked G2's draft, and I like the idea of going Senna, Yone, and playing heavy to topside, which ultimately is what they did do. That's when G2 looked their best until they were like all in one tricks.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Rogue opted in like they did, because they just want to pick Ornn away, but then it's like, well, we already have Senna. We can pick Carrie's top side and just play for that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, which
so
is
for
what happened.
me, obviously, when G2 in their first rotation, just to remind people, Twitch,
Yeah.
Yumi, and Kalista were banned by G2, then Zeri, GP, and Lucian by Rogue. G2 picked Senna, Rogue picked Wukong and Ornn. Then G2 went Yone Swain. That was obviously very exciting to not just see BB's Yone, but also to see Swain. Okay, where's it gonna go? And then Rogue answered that with Silas. I think overall that showed to me, okay, Rogue is maybe gonna try to play it a bit safer, and G2 is already gonna want to go a bit more all in with how they want to approach this game. Um, and for me, then so Diana to round it off is something we've seen from G2 quite a few times before. Wasn't really a surprise, but that Renata pick to me as last pick by Trimby, it was so funny to see. The camera where Trimby was just like,
Yeah.
oh my god,
I'm at,
what the hell do I
I'm,
do against this? Because Rogue likes to give Trimby counter pick. You know, they've done it
yeah,
many
I'm
times.
actually, I'm showing it on my screen right now if you want to show that.
Sure, yeah,
Because
yeah, hang on.
I've been looking at it from the screen all the time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so this is a guy who knows he's won draft, right? And then Argamas to, here we go, they're hovering Tom. Oh, God. Oh, God.
What the hell
Oh,
do we do?
no. Even the referee knows, man. Look at
Yeah,
this guy. He's like,
yeah.
oh, God.
Yeah.
What have they done?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in, obviously, and do you think Rogue should try to switch things up a bit more with not just giving Trimby counter pick last time? He is willing to play many different champions, but at this point, I don't know. Maybe they should try to secure a bot lane a bit more and not play towards the team comp as much. Or do you still think that support last pick is the way to go for them?
Again, I think they should have tried to go with flex pick here between with Ash being flex
Yeah.
between ADC and support, and then go into last pick ADC here because there's an ADC pick that counters all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to be flexible with the draft in that way. The issue of picking mid here is you don't know where Yona is going, right? So maybe against this, you might also think about going mid lane as a counter pick, right? And then just immediately picking one thing that's good into Senna on this rotation, right? Because it's likely you're into Senna Swain bot. Maybe they flex Swain elsewhere, right? But it's very likely into Senna Swain bot. So I think getting your bot lane in here might be the best pick. Because as Trimby realized at this point, there are actually very few support picks that do everything you'd need to do in a draft that's this heavy engage. You need like something with disengage and something as primary engage to set up on Wukong as well, right? So it's difficult. Like already here, you know that that's going to be your difficulty. I don't think you have to wait. Like I think here's where you do it, if anything. But my initial suggestion was what I would have pivoted to here.
Yeah.
It's like Yasuo is such a good pick here for G2. Just into Ornn, like it's obscenely strong, and then when they go Renata, it's now the freest game on the planet for him. Right? You're now trying to Renata ult through Yasuo Windwall.
Yeah.
Like have fun. You know?
Yeah, I think the idea for them was that, okay, if Yasuo uses his ult, then we can Renata ult maybe to do something about it, but then obviously it's generally speaking too late because G2 will just have pressed the go button of going in and killing you. Yeah, and about the game itself, you were mentioning a bit before the show that people were saying that Odo entered his lane or something like this. Well, I think there was this game.
I mean, I definitely saw people who thought that like a lot of people are being quite harsh on the solo lanes of Rogue right now. But I remember in the early phase, Odo was actually doing quite well. So on the initial crash, he did well. He forced Yone back on trades despite Wukong going top to bot clear, right? This is still good jungle knowledge from him. Now here when he stays, I like what he does here because he basically gives himself priority off of it, but then, oh yeah, I remember what happens. So here he stays on lowish mana, right?
Yeah.
He'll craft himself a cloth armor now, right? But the wave's good for him. So he can opt to do like a losing trade here, and with his TP advantage over Broken Blade, TP back. Because look what's coming up. In 30 seconds' time is going to be the level 6 wave, right?
Yeah.
So Broken Blade goes back like this. Odo's still here on low mana, low HP. Broken Blade does this trade on him, Broken Blade ends up dropping loads of HP for this trade, and now Odo Onmei is obviously in a bad position, but next is the 530 wave. So now if you're Odo, right, even though it looks like he's losing out here, if he just recalls and teleports back, if Broken Blade doesn't teleport back, he'll just get all in on this HP on level 6, because Odo hits level 6 on the next wave. So if you do this, you force Broken Blade to recall without TP, and Broken Blade has to walk to lane, which means you get priority with your level 6, and you can move towards midsection and make something happen around Drake, right? And the Drake play is what Rogue go for, but they end up playing a bit too funny on this. So Odo's going to push on next wave, but Malwang already decides to engage now. So I think is what happens. Yeah. So around here, they engage on Flakkid. Yeah, so Flakkid takes a really bad path. Malwang engages now. This is good, by the way, from them, right? Mm-hmm. They force Flakkid out. Now Odo doesn't have to shift down.
Yeah.
But if Flakkid hadn't taken this path, Odo actually has a window here where if he shoves in this wave, he can move down towards mid, towards bot with ultimate, and he's ahead of Yone here. And if Yone decides to just match him on that, then Yone loses minions and lets the wave crash, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually liked all of this sequence of events from Odo. I thought Odo was playing lane quite well.
Yeah.
And then later on, obviously, things start going badly when they start ganking. This whole scenario, obviously, I think Odo could have played that a bit better and just killed Broken Blade straight up there. Mm-hmm. But I think this play overall is good because you still have Silas coming up first. This flash from Broken Blade is quite funny. I don't know why he flashed there.
But, it was not. Yeah. I think he was trying to get an execute or something. I don't know why. It seemed.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have gotten that timer, but anyway, but overall, it did still feel to me that even though Rogue made that play, that G2 was already on the up and up in terms of getting map control towards the top side of the map in this game, because they were trying so heavily to play towards the top side. Where do you think things went wrong? Definitely for Rogue in this game.
So on Flakkid's first 6, they start playing heavily against Odo. Odo's just sat there trying to recall. He gets bonked. Rogue have mid priority here. Yeah, I mean, this is just going to be the play now. And I like that this is the play that they want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So too often. So obviously before this, all I've been watching is amateur regions in Europe, right?
Sure.
But too often I'll see Senna be picked and they're just not playing around Senna 6 to topside, right? And I'm really glad that G2 were doing that. Obviously the trade-off here, Rogue get to play quite aggro on bot side, and then here I have no idea what happens. Trimby's leaning heavily top. They have more than enough information, knowing that Diana's gone topside Herald play. She should be resetting to bot side camps. So I think they're just greeding here. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But Trimby's positioning here, if they were to move up, he'll always just get forced to move up towards Tribush. So he needs to position back towards the lane. They make a good play on mid here. So right now they're playing on 2 lanes. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why Trimby, this is just greed. This has to just be greed, no? Yeah, this has to just be greed. That has to just be greeding for first play.
Yeah.
But now off of this, enemy's going to get better resets. Wait, so I'm stuck on replay. I'll come back here. Yeah, I have to actually find the point where the game properly turns. So, oh yeah, this was the mid play. Oh my days, this is funny.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I don't understand this engage. But the bot tower, the mid tower is dropped so low off of the Herald play initially, mm-hmm. When they did their first gank towards Odo. But yeah, I don't understand the engage here with Comp so far away. Comp's really far away. Trimby obviously misses his stuff, mm-hmm. but it's you shouldn't be relying on all of that for your play. And mm-hmm. G2 are just generally playing 2 lanes way better than Rogue.
Yeah, I think for me, you just saw 2 parts of Trimby and Malrang engages. If we think back to the tier list episode, I had both of those players a bit higher than you did, but in this weekend it felt like Malrang and Trimby were struggling quite a bit within the team, and and I'm not necessarily sure if that's just comms going wrong, but they were caught out quite a bit. We had Malrang also playing the Vi, which didn't work out in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Trimby, he played. Hang on, what else did he play? Yeah, so he played 2 Renata games, I think, if I recall correctly, and 1 Rakan game against Mad Lions on the final day. It felt like they were having a bit of a more difficult time. I'm not sure if you feel it the same way, where things maybe went wrong for Rogue, is that the coordination between them and what the rest of the team wanted to do felt off.
I'm somewhat used to that though. Like, this is a bit controversial, but last split there were a lot of times where even if like I remember this Blitzcrank game Trimby had, but it was quite common by him that even if like early game 2v2s were going well, there would be a point in mid game where he would just extend too heavy onto like a tier 2, right? Or here it was like a plate on tier 1, right?
Sure.
And he would get caught and they would lose some map tempo off of it. When it comes to Malrung, he's always been a guy that was good at capitalizing on scenarios his team had already basically set up, and then no real scenarios set up. Like, I think if you could unlock Odo to go mid, then doing a heavy engage makes sense. But otherwise, I don't see why you wouldn't just try to defend mid tower, under tower after comp is grouped. You know, these guys are almost too greedy to try to get something done. And I feel like incidentally beforehand, the map was just better set up by the other elements, which I view as being the solo lanes, right? And also comp to a lesser. Like, I actually think comp does a really good job in the 2v2s on bot side. But otherwise, like, the situations we've seen here are just greed. Like, off of that, they also got to make a play on top side because they basically revealed where everybody was, right? They were no longer leaning heavy to Yone. Yone was at a point where it's already quite easy for him, and it's difficult for Odo to trade back because of the Senna ult. They actually made that mid play on Malrung. Well, Malrung made the mid play and then ulted top side to kill Odo again, you know? And I don't see how this is just solo lane fault or something. You could maybe say the Silas pick isn't the most useful thing here, and I'd probably agree with you there. But I feel like that's an issue with their draft order rather than anything.
Yeah.
This Drake fan. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say is that what a factor for me is that I was thinking a lot about watching this Rogue is that this is it's been a long time since Rogue has played in front of a crowd. Their finals against G2 in the spring split was actually the first time they've played in front of a crowd since the LEC went offline because of COVID, which is 2 years ago. And now and then against G2 they lost 3-0, so very memorably. And now they're back in front of a crowd, and it felt like as a team they had to get used to it a bit, and maybe they will find their footing there. I'm not sure if they will themselves also say that that's something they have to get used to. But it did feel, if when I was watching them, it just previous Rogue felt a lot more oiled, you know, like they followed the book, they followed the playbook that they had set for themselves, and that's how they played out their opponents. And this didn't feel like that Rogue, in just the way the skirmishes went, in the way that their ganks or like teaming up went. It just felt off. Not always, but sometimes I just feel like, okay, this is not the Rogue that I'm used to seeing in terms of working together as a team, because that is something to me that Rogue always did pretty well. And I wanted to ask you actually as well, something that Rogue also did super well in previous splits is figuring out the meta heading into the split and abusing that a lot.
That's true. That's very true.
And that also doesn't seem to be the case this time. Now, obviously, you know, it's very difficult to be right like 5 splits in a row about what the meta's gonna be. It's already very impressive that they managed to do like 4 splits in a row.
No, I mean, at the very least, actually, Rogue's drafts are very often my favorite drafts. For sure.
But like, still, this split, yeah.
Yeah, this split, obviously, like, I already disagreed with this draft, so obviously it's not the case. Okay, so before we all in on Rogue, I do just want to say, sure. Like, I think G2, like, because you're saying Rogue were very by the book on the last splits, blah, blah, blah. I think if I had to say a team felt by the book, to me it was G2. And obviously a lot of people are going to be like, G2 are like a chaos team. But, like, everything we've talked about here that G2 are doing right are just fundamentals at the end of the day. But they are consistently applying those fundamentals properly. Yes, it could be quite binary that they enjoy playing to top so heavily with this Senna comp, right? But they do pull that off in a consistent manner every time. And I do view G2's successes as a team effort, and I definitely think it's commendable that they've clearly developed during MSI in confidence on their playstyles, right?
Yeah.
So and they're executing it in a very consistent manner, and I'm gonna enjoy watching them play. They're gonna feel like a one-note team to me, but I'm fine with that. One-note teams are generally the ones that win worlds. All right, no one's going to accuse FPX, Damwon, any of these teams of being goddamn chameleons. All right, they all did like one thing over and over again really well.
Yeah.
All right, so I also think G2 put themselves in a good position. All right, so Rogue drafts actually.
Yeah.
Let me look at Leaguepedia. So this is one of their drafts. Yeah, I normally like Rogue drafts overall. I do remember. Oh right, yeah, no, I just clicked on the wrong week. You may wish to write down this timestamp.
I have already written it down.
There you go. You're an insane journalist. You're an insane journalist.
I mean, this isn't even journalistic work. This is just being a host, being an edit producer, being director. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
You can even turn some of these moments into funny bits, like me now pouring out the alcohol.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Okay, this is way too small on the screen though. So you might want to zoom in for this if you want to show this.
All right, sure.
The drafts.
You may notice I'm using my left hand. I am not left-handed, but my right hand is a bit fucked right now. Does that work?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I could also just wait. It's probably easier if I do. Okay. So
wait, what? All right. So let's go over the Rogue drafts then. You pull them up here.
So they just love Renata, no?
Rogue. Yeah, they picked it last pick twice, and then against Mad Lions, it was banned by Mad Lions before Trimby could pick it on the last as last pick. So yeah, they do love Renata a lot, and Mad Lions picked up on that before the game.
No, I know I'm clearly drinking now, but I swear to God that was my first sip. This was the first game where I looked at these picks and I was thinking, man, this is a really good Nasus game. Nasus is ridiculously strong into Kalista and Azir. Azir can't actually bully a Fleet Footwork Resolve secondary Nasus out of lane with Dawn Shield, right? It's just not possible. Mm-hmm. And Nasus controls Azir so well in fights. And basically off the first recall in level 6. So basically about level 7 with Ionian boots, Nasus can already 1v1 Azir at any point.
Mm-hmm.
So it controls him really well. It's really obvious what you do into Kalista. I'm not talking about this Doran's Ring 3 points in E Nasus. You do Q into W second, and then it's basically impossible for Kalista Azir to play the game. It's a very underrated flex pick in mid, top, and support that you could, obviously in support you would be doing 3.C. That I think should be a higher priority if Azir Kalista are as high priorities as they are. There are very few champions that are really good into Azir, and this is one of them. Here would have been perfect.
Yeah. Why do you think Nasus support was something that also people were talking about at least last split, and it was hovered a few times because people were talking.
Trimby did.
Yeah.
Trimby hovered. Yeah.
Why do you think teams are afraid of committing to Nasus support?
Teams are generally afraid of committing to anything that they don't fully understand right now. Generally, it is also better to just all in on things that you are already strong at as a team, right? I also think Nasus last split was very, very niche. Like, that was the Jinx Affilio split. It's not as strong as it would be in this meta, right? With those two picks up, I think it was really strong. I don't think it would have been strong if Trimby had picked it into G2, right? Not into Yasuo, Yone, blah, 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 blah. Like, then I don't think it's good. But here I think it's good. And I also think that with Nasus, a lot of people think the only way you can do it is with this phase rush, 3 points in E build mid lane. And they don't understand that there are sustained scenarios where it can be really strong. You just have to make sure you have decent side lanes going in. But if Nasus is one of your earlier picks here, then you can go for like counter pick top, right? Or finish your counter pick bot lane, which Fnatic love to do. Generally, just people like to think that players put a lot of thought into it, but generally players go with what they feel, right?
Yeah.
And that is a benefit. in a lot of ways, because you do have to be able to make split-second decisions, and you're only going to do that on things you're truly confident on.
Sure.
So is it worth spending the week playing Nasus for these niche situations, or playing the things you're already good at so you can be even more confident going into stage?
Yeah.
You know?
That's
the
also, I think, the talking like with analysts that work for teams or work with players, something that I've heard, sometimes people are like, yeah, but these players, maybe the itemization might not be objectively right in the situation, but they understand how their champion plays in that situation much better. It's the same with taking runes. They understand exactly how much damage output they do in the situation against that champion. And they're not robots, they're not somebody who can just change everything and immediately everything clicks. There's a few players who understand something that very well, but those are generally people who've played for years and years and years and have been through so many different situations that they can just browse through their encyclopedia of, okay, this is how this works in this circumstance. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, I love to extrapolate it even further, right? Because there have been junglers like when Amazing joined Schalke, right? I thought that was a really good pickup for them. I actually think the way Amazing plays jungle is really stupid. But the thing that Amazing does is he actually makes decisive calls in game. And it is way better to be pages ahead on the wrong book than not to be reading at all, you know? And by making decisions and keeping Schalke decisive, they were able to net a lot of wins just because the enemy team was trying to figure out what it was Schalke was doing and trying to think about things, and they were just doing. You will get ahead of teams just by doing, so long as you're all committed to it. And Amazing is really good in-game shot caller, getting everyone committed to something. Even if it's kind of like the wrong thing to do, that's fine, because if the enemy team is committed to anything, you've caught them. You have most likely just caught them with their pants down. And the reason why that works so well, and it's demonstrated it works really well. Amazing went to 100 Thieves next split and did well with them as well, right? The reason that works well is also why taking these like poor itemizations go well as well, because they've committed to that so often that they just know their limits on that, right? So even if they're building the wrong items and you're building the right items, if they're still knowing that they can kill you in this particular spot and you have to think about it for a single second, they're going to get the kill. They're going to get you, and you're not going to get the situations that are really, really good, right? So yeah, I fully agree with that. I don't think, obviously a perfect player would be a one who could adapt to the best build in every situation and have that feeling. But these feelings matter. You're not trying to be objectively the best at League. If anyone's trying to do that for you, that's stupid. You're trying to be better at League than the other guy right now. And this is a better way to be better at League than the other guy right now. However, Nasus dicks on the Zir Kalista there. So that's also true. Like, both these things are true. You know?
Well,
it's black and white. It's not black and white.
No, it's not black and white, but maybe it is something that we might be seeing more of late into the split, because it usually takes like teams just to adapt. They're gonna play it maybe a bit more. Maybe they'll play it in one, maybe they'll play it in one scrim block, realize, oh shit, it's actually so good, and then they'll play it more just to see how good it actually is and test the limits. Players obviously also play a lot in solo queue and just try things and report back on what their findings are. So there are going to be differences in that. But back to what we were discussing, it's the rogue drafts. Maybe you want to pull up them against. Hang on, their second game.
Well, here we most.
But then
here we mostly just talked about like a counter pick Fnatic could do, but like the issues here versus before is that I would never normally see Rogue pick something that could be so easily countered. And I think like a Draven composition, knowing that Fnatic's playstyle is to just aggressively gank bot over and over again, going open Kalista strikes me as incredibly strange, right? Now obviously there's a later game where Hylissang just they have a fun 2v2 level 1 in the bot lane, right? But like Hylissang on Nautilus gives me nightmares. But you can't just assume that kind of a thing is going to happen and go Kalista first pick. You know, this is an easily counterable pick against a team
played Morgana here,
whose playstyle counters it. Yeah, no, not this game. That's why I said a later game. Like here, the Morgana into Renato is a really good pick. Like it's Fnatic. Obviously, they picked a counter pick bot lane, right? So you should know the kind of team you're playing towards. And you should know the kind of champions that are available and know that this isn't where you would do it. And I feel like old Rogue would not pick something first pick that would not just be so easily countered, but something that you would expect to be countered. I like the Azir pick, because I don't think Fnatic are a team that's going to, out of these two, opt to just straight counter pick for humanoid. They're normally going to do side lane counter picks anyway. So I think, yeah, them going Gwen is somewhat predictable. Though otherwise, I think you just go Yone here for humanoid every time, right? Like that would probably be the best thing to do, or Nasus. Yeah, like you can easily limit the top lane champ pool between the two of these. I do think the Orianna pick was really in though. Now I could understand maybe why Vi could be good. This Renata obsession's a bit weird because it's kind of easily countable pick, but this first pick already sets up a scenario where it's easy for Fnatic to get their game plan. That's just not what I'm used to Rogue doing, right? So we went over this one, and then on this, they see Wukong, and again, like instead of trying to match jungle, they end up with double blind, right? And one of them is something that's easily counterable by a champion that, you know, they were already countered by at a point. Obviously, they end up winning this game, but you can't rely on fucking Elder fight being it, you know?
Do you think Rogue were thinking, okay, Mad Lions is a team with Armut in top, guys are in support who also have played Wukong and know the champion pretty well? Was Rogue in any way trying to play around that, you think? Or it's like, okay, we're just not sure where this is going to go yet. Let's just lead with our own, with what we want to do in this draft?
Sure. I mean, in that regard, jungle's still going to be the harder pick for Mad Lions to just straight counter at this point, right?
Yeah, because Wukong is out of the champion pool if you flex it to a different one.
Yeah, Wukong's out of the champion pool, and also you're not facing your enemy jungler 24/7 in game, right? If you pick a jungle early on, like the reason why jungle early rotation red side is very commonly settled upon as being optimal is because if the lanes are set up a certain way, you're not going to be able to counter the jungler early on anyway. So it becomes picking a jungler that's going to be useful at all stages of the game, right? So very often metas will default to that. So I think you match the Wukong with a jungle pick anyway and don't blind laners, you know? Especially not in a sense where you're doing the exact same mistake you already did, right? Jaden should be good here.
Yeah.
And then and then after they see bot lane support jungle, they end up blinding top as well. You know? Like these are all blinds. This isn't a draft where they're trying to give the option to counter pick as much as possible. These are all champions where you can pick things that are good into them. Now, you could definitely argue that you know Armut's champ pool, so you're at least picking around that, right? But along with what they showed the other games, they're just leaving themselves way more open to be countered than I'm used to seeing them do, right? None of these are game-winning picks. Right? None of them are game-winning picks.
I mean, we saw it actually in the game play out as well, because if we think back about how the game went between Mad Lions and Rogue, with Mad Lions in full control for basically the entire game.
Then Rogue, they flipped it.
Rogue not being able to do anything. There was one point where Rogue tried to do the Baron, and then Oyoya jumped in and stole it. And then later on, the turning point, and a sudden finale to the game, is where Mad Lions was doing Elder Dragon. By every means, it should die, but Malrang just jumps forward, launches some abilities into the pit, and they get it. Rogue get the team fight, Mad Lions all die, and I guess that was the end of the game. I remember so distinctly, everybody in the studio was all like, wait, what? What is happening? You saw the audience as well. The audience was like, whoa, what?
This is one of those games that I like turned off because it was over, and then come back to find that Rogue have somehow won. You know, like this is one of those games. It was like,
wait,
nah.
what happened? Yeah.
Well, I mean, assuming the game ends in a human manner, okay, then I would just say, like, no matter what, this should always distress you. Wukong, like you say, is a flex, so Wukong is essentially locked in when the Naya is locked in. So what I see here is counterpick for Mad. Counterpick for Mad, right? And then Nautilus, they get to ban Renata, which is actually a really good pick into Nautilus itself. So the only thing they had to blind was their Nautilus, right? And they were able to buffer it really, really well. They didn't even feel the need to ban any other supports afterwards. And Rogue have been counterpicked in all of these roles on fucking red side, right? This is just poor sequencing of their draft, right? Like you're not gonna, like we don't even have to talk about champions here because they just can't get the point where they get the freedom to pick the champions. You know, they're just blinding all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, this is my issue with their drafts.
Sure.
And it's not what Rogue used to be.
Now people are obviously going to be overreacting a lot. So, okay, Rogue is doomed. I saw a bunch of people, including myself, making the incredibly funny statement. Okay, Rogue's just now going to int the regular season so they can win the playoffs instead of flipping it around where they do well in the regular season and choke in the
that would be based.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a new strategy they're trying. But overall, I personally don't really feel like things are very doomed for Rogue yet. This is obviously a team that when they figure out the meta, they can play to it very well. It's just now, for me, getting to that point where they are. And I still think, and I will reiterate this again, maybe that crowd factor is actually something for Rogue. Maybe not all the players. I think Odo Abne would be perfectly fine. I don't think Comp, based on the performance he gave this weekend as well, that he is somebody who's very, very much affected by that. But we saw Trimby, maybe Malrang. We haven't really seen him play in front, like a lot in front of a crowd either. And
did he in LCK? I have no idea.
No, I think he just played on Dom 1 when he was a sub, and they played. I think that was last year, right? When they went with Showmaker bot for a while and Canyon mid, and then he came in as jungler. But it was also, I think, without a crowd, if I recall correctly. But
sure.
Yeah, but then Lisa Larson, I don't know if he's at a point at this time. Maybe it's also just playing in front of a crowd for the first time in a while. If I get a chance to talk to them about it, I will. But
I mean, his like I hate ever defaulting to the differences are the differences on the Rift, right? And here the difference being they're playing in front of a crowd versus not. What I will say is that I always did,
but it might be a factor. Is what I'm saying. It could be. Yeah.
What I will say is I always did view Rogue as a team that had mid-game issues, even when they were, you know, doing really well in the regular split, right? Mm-hmm. And this has always been a team that had wide open windows in their early game, even when they were doing really well in regular split, right? These are things that often got exposed to playoffs, but I never viewed that as like, oh, they play differently there. They just teams learn.
I mean, it's fair. Like Rogue Time became a meme for a reason, right? When the clock hit 20 minutes, they would just sometimes fumble their complete game, and then they had such a dominant early game. Then they would fumble, be like kind of even, and they would have to climb their way back to a
I will clarify. Sure. I think the point between 14 and 20 minutes is where I think that they were always bad.
All right.
And so then post 20, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the Rogue Time meme was like 20 to 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah. So basically, after Baron spawns, I functionally view that as late game.
Sure.
Right? Because now the map doesn't really get to change again after that.
Yeah, I mean, it
functionally speaking,
maybe with like souls, like Dragon Soul, I guess.
You're already compressing for Dragon Soul at that point, so you're already having to fight both sides of the map at that point for very significant objectives, because it's either about to be Soul Point on Drake, or it's going to be Soul itself on Drake, right? Or Elder on Drake. So Drake's high priority no matter what, and now Baron is a perpetual high priority target on top side, right?
All right.
So
20 minutes like late game for you.
Yes, that's literally. So whereas after the tier 1 turret's full and you start swapping, that's mid game for me. So I always viewed Rogue in those mid game scenarios. That's when Trimby would overextend. Malron would not get the memo and just engage. You know, that's when I think things go bad. How I thought the late games were slowing down was because they went sometimes for these drafts that played really good wide map states but didn't like get team fights. And that mostly got fixed by Hans Sammer becoming a Giga Astro Omega Chad. Yeah. Now I think like their drafts are just bad early, and it's difficult for them to figure out how to come back in mid game because of that. Like this draft thing, that can't be a stage thing. You know, that can't be a stage thing.
No. Drafts can't be a stage thing, obviously, and that's something that's figured out. But I'm just thinking back about some like the execution as well with the team. But anyway, we've spoken about Rogue and G2. Who do you want to do next? Maybe the team that should have gone 3-0, Mad Lions.
God, can I talk about BDS actually? Like, it's such a skip, but yeah,
okay,
like
sure. Then we go to the team that should not have gone 0-3. If we phrase it that way, because they had a very long game, obviously, against SK Gaming, where they played for 44 minutes in total, and at many points in the game, it felt like BDS was in control. But I don't know, man. Like last split, people were saying BDS had developed a solid early game over the course of the split, but then everything fell apart after. And now this was just the ultimate, maybe not the ultimate example, but it's such a fantastic example of no matter how often BDS got ahead, they would always find a way to screw it up.
100% actually, yeah. Like I agree on that. So I liked their early games, especially 2v2 bot lane. That was going really well. So I think the game against SK is probably the best example of what I'm talking about, to be honest.
Sure.
So
Yeah. So
let me
just
see.
to recap, this was on day one of the LEC Summer Split. SK ended up with a composition of they had Camille, they had Ari, they had Viego, Kai'Sa, and Nautilus, and BDS were playing with Jin Zhao, Misfortune, Renata, and Gnar and Akali. And yeah, they've been playing Akali quite a bit, actually, if I think about it. Well, it is a champion Nuclear Int likes to play, and he was also pretty adept at it. But it was a very back and forth game. It wasn't a pretty game. I remember sitting in the audience and just in the studio and talking to people. We were all saying, "Oh, what are we watching?" It was basically toddlers fighting in the mud. You know, that's what it felt like in terms of gameplay quality, at least. It wasn't a pretty game. Definitely not something we should be very proud of as as people who like to watch EU. This is not what we want to be representative of the region. But yeah, share me your thoughts about that game.
So my biggest issue with BDS right now is that, and I said this phrase once earlier on, that they insist too much on the neutrals. And what I mean by that they insist too much on neutral objectives is that they're very good at playing early game. They're very good at playing when the game is wide, so to speak. Everybody is playing one individual lane each. But then when it comes to their groupings, if they are off on the groupings, they don't seem to care about that, and they will just stay, no matter what the game state is. Yeah. So there are plenty of scenarios where I watched them go to contest one of these objectives, and there are multiple points where they could just go and reset lane states, and then go again for a contest at an advantage. But they will instead stay on the contest to the point where they start trying to flip the Drake or the Baron even in front of the enemy, right? Like they ended up, I think it was this game, they end up losing. So like here's a really good example of it. Like even though the map as a whole is really good for them, they could easily go for like a tier 2 contest on top side, right? Especially given that Nuclear Int's about to have teleport up, right? Actually, no, he has teleport up, right? Even though they could try to push out midsection after they make this really funny catch on Camille. You're showing my screen, right?
I am.
Yeah, sure. So like they do this, they burn 2 ults, right? Genax just flashed from here to here, by the way, so he's still in the MF ult. But just ignoring that.
I can't see what you're pointing out, but that's fine. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Wait. Let me 1080p here. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
No, I'm just saying from here to here. That's a bit different.
Oh, the mouse doesn't appear?
No.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So
fine,
so the flash by Jax doesn't really matter anyway. It's funny. Yeah. The point is they've now burned their ultimates, right? But they have forced Gen X out, right? And Gen X is probably going to look to recall and TP in. I'm basically saying that they, from this point, could easily just take vision control here, push out midsection and force Gen X after to recall further back, and then try to set the map state such that they can just move back in towards this Drake at some point, or play heavily for tier 2 and force SK to match them on that, right? And with Nuclear Int's teleport. And then reset the map and just try to play for this again. It is a sole point. It's not necessarily a soul, and they'll be in a good position to contest that next as well. So they could even just keep playing out really good lane states for themselves. But instead, despite the fact that they now don't have 3 very critical ultimates, they insist on just staring at the enemy when they know that they're about to have their Camille teleport back in, and just flipping this for no real reason, right? Like, at this point, after you've burned all of that, why are you flipping at all? Gilius steals it, right? But ultimately, they're flipping against a team that they are ahead on. They could easily play through Nuclear Int right now. They could even give this up and play heavy for Baron. Like, there's no way that these guys are going to just let them walk topside with 20-minute Baron, right? And pressure tier 2 and decide, yeah, we'll just go for Drake instead of letting them do that, you know? Like, there are so many scenarios like this. I remember that off of this, they end up on a quite weirdish recall. They force Baron again. Well, not again. I mean, they force another objective, right? Instead of trying to play their lanes out, they could just try to play Nuclear Int lane out, right? And try to get picks in jungle or something like this. But instead, they just go straight towards the Baron, force enemy into them, and now they end up on a really bad recall because they did this, right? Now, SK have full control of the map because these guys with their lead just beeline to the nearest neutral objective every single time. And now they go back on the map again, right? They take Drake control, but they've lost Baron control because of their weird Baron play earlier, right? A Baron play that they could have done instead of the Drake, right? Like, giving up soul point for Drake is fine. Giving up soul point for Drake. Giving up soul point for Baron is fine. Giving up soul for Baron is fine, even. Right? Teams will make that decision all the time. But these guys have to contest everything. And now they're so behind on the map that they lost full control of Baron, but Baron is the only thing up to contest, so all of this vision bot side's a bit worthless. But what do? They just have to go in. They have to go again and again and again.
Yeah.
So they're hovering perma here. They're not, like, this bot wave is just not being touched at all. They actually do get this Drake, luckily. This is one of the only good things that they get. SK don't contest that, and they go for the Baron control that we were suggesting before, and I think this ends up turning into a pick for them. This, I have no idea why they bother contesting this bot tier 1. This doesn't matter at all. Baron is clearly the big thing. If they want to play Genak's bot side here, you could play to burn his teleport at Baron. Instead, they have to defend this objective. There are objectives you can give up. The structures are another one of them. The neutrals are one of them. But they can't give up any objective. This is like the consistent pattern that they have. So the Baron control they still haven't been able to take back from ages ago when they did their Baron play. And now they just start doing Baron on top of the scuttle, right? I remember seeing this and being like, guys, like, you don't just have to beeline every objective. And then, they end up getting forced out again.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
so
ults burned on the retreat as well. Yeah.
So
like, they Go on.
What I'm saying is that it feels like BDS is kind of in this perpetual panic state where they feel like, oh, we have to go here, oh, we have to go here, oh, we have to go here.
They have to contest. They just feel like they have to contest everything. Whether it's a tower, whether it's a Drake, whether it's a Baron. If it's up, then they have to contest and try to force a fight there.
Yeah.
When they could just play extended lanes with Nuclear Int, get Nuclear Int the picks that he needs to snowball. He's already snowballing on this Akali. Play through that, right? But instead, they must defend, contest everything.
They don't really realize we can trade. If they take this objective, we can trade it for something else on the map. And they're like, oh, no, we have to go there.
Well, you want to force SK to make split decisions. You don't want them to be grouped. You want them to be split up so Nuclear Int can get picks with them, right? Now, Akali can play front-to-back fights better than other assassins can, but if you have an assassin who's 4-0, why aren't you accepting Baron control and tier 2 top if they want to go for soul point? You know, like just do that. Why are you wasting Agressivo on a tier 1 bot that's about to die instead of finally taking back Baron control topside and playing for that tier 2 again? You know, like, why contest any of this? Why just go straight for the Baron again? You know, like, why? Like, this is for me their biggest issue. And this ends up with those scenarios where, again, you start stealing, and this happens in other games as well, right?
Yeah,
in the other games,
they also played against Astralis, and they played against Vitality, and I think against Vitality also especially had a pretty good shot at actually winning game. I thought for quite a period. No way they go 0-2 with losing against SK and Astralis, who are supposed to be the direct opponents, I guess, for like not ending in 10th place, and then they win against Vitality, who is a team who's been very clear about wanting to compete for the title. But they also end up losing that game against Vitality. Was that just more of the same issue for you as what you explained now? It's just trying to contest everything all at the same time. The other team just realizing better, okay, you know, if they're gonna contest, we have an advantage in this situation. It was that reiterated for you across those games?
Yeah, it definitely, like, for me, this was the consistent problem BDS had.
Right.
There was one of those games where the enemy team was actually forcing more or less in lane almost every time, rather than it becoming a neutral objective thing. And I think that might actually be the Astralis game, rather than the Vitality game. And I found that kind of I just want to say on the Astralis side, I was actually really impressed with Dejor. That guy has definitely that guy's definitely gone way past my expectations. Yeah, I think it was Astralis that were constantly engaging on them in lane rather than just waiting for the neutral swing. But even then, the neutral syndrome just kept happening with them. You know, they just have to. They have to learn to give them up. You know.
Yeah.
I do wonder a bit, because when I think about like 2019 G2, I think it was 2019 G2, yeah. And Origin at the time, the big distinction between them is that one of them knew when to give up Drakes and the other one was just perpetually going for them. I think it was Origin that was going for every single Drake, and G2 was actually the team that understood when to give up for mid-game map control. So my point actually escapes me then, because I was about to say, I wonder if Grabs like figured that was the optimal way to play or not, but nah, that actually isn't. They actually kind of think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like, it is also kind of ERL-ish. In the ERLs, every herald must be fought over, and every Drake must be fought over, and every Baron must be fought over. And lane states, map splits, trading doesn't exist in the vocabulary of any of the teams. I do wonder how much of them having new blood in is allowing them to like consider these to be the optimal thing. Like, because it's now a Dota and Aggressivo, great players in their own rights, but they did basically just win these contested mechanics.
Well, I think what we heard when BDS announced the changes that would be coming to the lineup was that Aggressivo was going to be a person who was supposed to be more of that leader in the game, and we did see. I think that was actually his game against SK, where he tried to really force a flank with his Gnar, or not really a flank, but an ult with his Gnar, where he hopped forward and he flashed forward, and SK simply sidestepped, and in the end he got like one with his shove, which is a bit sad. But is it something you think can develop in time in this split, where he can step up to be a better shot caller and have better coordination within this team, or they also still have three of the same players who are making these mistakes?
Even though he couldn't last hit for the first 10 minutes on Akali, he actually had a really good Akali game, right? But yes, like I also remember this also happened in the SK game. Like there was a flank that he went for that just wasn't an actually good scenario, because he is now playing against a team that understood that you can also open in river instead of just opening in lane 2 river. And so they caught him out on rotation when he was trying to meet up with the flank that Shinkrov was doing from below Herald, right? So then they all engaged on him and he was forced out. There are loads of scenarios like this that I think he just needs to like learn from, because he's not going to be contested that way in the ERLs, but he will be contested with those map movements in the LEC. And once he's used to that, I think, he'll be really good. And I think he already showed really good games already. Well, one really good game on the Akali. In terms of being like the Kennen that gets like 5-man flanks and stuff, he needs to learn. Right? It would be weird if he didn't need to learn, you know? Not even Caps look like Caps' first split. Like no. To remind people. So like, but yeah, there's a decent shot that he'll show to be the Aggressivo everyone's hyped up this split for sure.
Cool. So Astralis then, the team that went 2-1 already. I guess 2/3 of their wins from last split in total. So they're bound to finish at least with more wins. Maybe who knows in what position. They're doing much better. You spoke very highly of Dajor. He's also somebody who stood out to me as maybe not a perfect player yet, but in terms of improvement, damn, he played much better and was actually a very reliable factor for them.
So I gotta say something that's probably going to be controversial, especially given the state of things now, where they're probably actually better than them. But this team strikes me as like roguelite, you know? They are the version of Rogue we probably expected to come in week 1, kind of deal, you know?
Okay.
They're very similar to them in a lot of ways. I view Visachantry and Dejor as the guys who are setting up a lot of things for the team right now. I view Xerxes primarily as someone who's capitalizing, though he's doing a lot more job capitalizing now that he's back in Europe then ignoring, which is what he was doing last time he was in Europe. So he has gotten better. Wherever happened in North America. I didn't watch him in North America, guys. I can't comment. Maybe he was a spam ganker in North America, but this guy's much more active right now than he used to be. But I view Vizichachi and Deja as the driving forces here. And Kobe is kind of like a rock, though he's strong in his own right. I never bought into that whole hype that he had. I think it was like spring 2018, something like this, where he got like MVP and then got sold to TSM and then sucked for 2 weeks and then got fired. But I mean, he is a very capable ADC. I haven't made up my mind on Jeonghoon. Loads of people were really high on his Pyke game, but he was a Pyke one trick. So it'd be like getting really high on Hylissang for his Pyke games and then watching his Nautilus games, you know? Which for this guy was his Tom game.
To watch. He did play well. That was exciting to see.
He played well, but a lot of the highlights on that was the Misfits game, right? A lot of highlights on that game for me were coming from Deja and Vizichachi's responses to the Irrelevant incident that was happening, where Irrelevant was basically like 3-0 that game. And for me, that was much more game defining. He did play well on the Pyke, but I also remember his Tom Kench game against BDS where he was just monster inting. So
yeah, and he had the game on Soraka where the
Soraka game was fine. I thought the Soraka game was fine. Soraka is an underrated champion, so good on you for actually picking it. No, it's a goddamn lane bully, and it should be paired with stuff like Senna as well. Like it's actually incredibly strong.
Sure.
And he played it as the aggressive lane bully. I think this guy, like Jeonghoon, from my early impressions, I would put him in the camp that I like to call like the Hylissang line, where this is a guy who feels like he must go in and play very aggro no matter what. And it will almost be dependent on how his team plays, whether it works or not. The reason why I don't want to say he is like Hylissang is because still the defining thing for me about Hylissang is his map control, and I haven't seen that from Jeonghoon yet. Right, like the Tom game, he was too far behind to show that. The Soraka game, Soraka's not that good at it. Obviously, the Pyke game was good, but like I need to see like map control before I say he is Hylissang. Right now, I'll say he's very aggressive, and that's clearly well outside of that one game is clearly going well. So overall, though, Vizichachi's return, he is very good at understanding when to group with his team.
Yeah.
Right. And very good at finding good angles to group with his team from. And Deja is just playing way better than I thought. Like there are fine moments. Like I think it was against Vitality, right? It was Victor into Zoe.
Let's see. We had Astralis against BDS. We had G2 against Astralis, and we had Astralis Misfits. So it's probably not.
He almost got like Tommy 2 tapped by Zoe or something. It was not into Misfits.
So it'd probably BDS then. So what was he playing? You said he was playing Victor against BDS.
He's playing Victor against BDS.
Yeah. So that early game was pretty slow actually between those two, but then Astralis more and more started to kind of control the game and push BDS out of it.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like what I remembered is that he finds really nice opportunities where even if he's low HP, he's doing really nice leans on that can actually win some early fights for them. I may be misremembering the specific champion matchup itself. No, wait, I wasn't misremembering. It was Astralis versus G2. He played Victor to Zoe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought. See, I thought I made a mammoth cock up, but actually it was you. No. So I remember Zoe Caps got him quite low on an early trade, but he recognized that he had a window because of how slow the wave was crashing into him, where he could do a lean towards blue buff, and that lean towards blue buff helped defend against an invade by Jankos and netted his team really strong early kills off that. And I was thinking that's an awful lot of confidence on that level of HP. For a guy who isn't just new to the LEC, but new to top play in general. You have to bear in mind that before he joined LEC, yes, he was on that Fnatic team that went to finals at EUN. He didn't look very good on it, sorry, Deja. And he was literally playing in Division 3 that same split. Like, he got brought in the last few weeks. This guy's made, like, a meteoric rise up.
Yeah.
He's almost evidence for me that you could take almost any mid laner in Europe, and so long as you give them a while at a high level, they will develop properly. If Dejor in his second split is performing like this, right, having come from a Division 3 team in summer,
Yeah.
right, the previous year, imagine how Rika might have looked like this split, you know? So I am impressed by the kid. I think it says a lot about how we should think about rookies. Because he didn't look that hot last split. There were some games that he did, but let's be real, he didn't look that hot last split.
No.
And he has very much...
He liked playing Vex, and he was okay with it, but overall,
yeah, if I could say like the most surprising player of the week, it would be Dejor, right? So those fine moments require a confidence that I think he's demonstrating. There were loads of good outplays that he made on sides where he didn't just delay for his team, but he played them mechanically very well, and therefore created windows of opportunity for his team. And I'll always value that more than anything. If you're a guy who creates windows for your team, that to me matters the most. You want a bunch of players who create as many opportunities as possible to capitalize on, not just people who can capitalize. So yeah, I'm gonna watch him next week with great interest. Xerxes definitely improved from how he was in Europe before. I saw an interview recently where he said, was it you actually? I don't know.
Probably.
Where he said that something like that he feels like he's in his rookie split again. Was that you?
No, it's not a rookie split. No, but I did an interview.
I sabotaged someone else. Sorry.
Oh man.
but
I'm gonna
yeah,
look for a new co-host now.
I mean, he definitely seems motivated. Again, though, I feel like most of the setup was Vizicachi and Dejor rather than him.
Well, that he does,
still.
and then what Xerxes did say in the interview with me is that he was just super glad that he got the chance to return to EU because it was a very rough time for him in NA, is what he said. And generally speaking, you're not gonna get another chance then if you to go back to EU because people go to NA to retire and to die a slow death in their careers in NA. But he is still very motivated to come back and prove himself. But I'm glad that you were also impressed by Dejor because I felt watching him it's like, okay, this guy is maybe not the real deal yet. If it's been 3 games in this split, it's like saying Viteo is like maybe the best mid laner after spring. Where he's like, yeah, he's definitely a lot better than he was last year, but he's not the best yet. But give him time. And we'll see where this guy goes, right? How did you feel about Astralis overall with this lineup?
I can see a model by which this team nets wins, right? And a model by which this team can do deep playoff runs because of the comparison to Rogue, right? They play much the same way. Your solo laners are making the setups. Your ADC is like a rock. Your support is sometimes too aggressive, but is very aggressive. There is already a model out there. If they want to understand how to play this iteration of Astralis at peak, they should watch last split Rogue VODs, right? Those are the kinds of game plans that you want to be adjusting to, and the guy who needs to do the most adjustment for that is, I'm sorry to say, Dejor, right? Like, Dejor's the one that would need to learn the most because Larson was such a huge part of why they were doing so well, right? And a lot of that was his map-based play, which Dejor was showing shades of, and his ability to respond to plays on him, which again Dejor was showing shades of. If he masters that and they play around that kind of thing, then they could just be that team, which obviously didn't win, right? But come on, getting to the finals, I think Astralis will take that over being like 10th every split.
Yeah,
right?
I think if you would go to the Astralis leadership or like even the players said like, hey, listen, we can't give you the title. Are you fine with second? And it's like, where do I sign? Yes. How many limbs do I lose for it? It's like,
yes, I'm fine with going to Worlds. Thanks for asking.
Oh man, that would be a sight to behold.
Imagine Astralis world champions. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what I think is that while I'm very positively surprised, obviously, by their performance, I still it's too small of a window for me to be very optimistic about it because for me it's that okay. A lot of the meta still has to be figured out. There's teams playing with new players. How are these teams going to develop over time? And it's also still a very big question mark I have with Astralis because, okay, maybe the start is good. It might be this quote-unquote honeymoon phase. Are they actually going to look back at these 3 games that they've played and take the right lessons from them and keep implementing them? I think that's still a big question mark when you have so many unproven quantities in the team. I think the only proven quantity in a weird way is Kobe, because he's been there for a while and he's a stable factor. Dajo is a rookie. The other three are new to the team, so that's a big question mark that's gonna be there for me.
I mean, I definitely think even if Xerxes is like new to be back in Europe and is clearly improved, I do think that he can probably give a presence of stability at the very least, right?
Okay.
That the other younger players can latch onto.
Mm-hmm.
And Kobe is basically a grandpa at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Dajal's really the only one there, who's gonna have any sort of issue like this. And I think he's just surrounded by so many dads that he'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, one of his dads, Physic Chachi, did have a bit of an end game, which he readily admitted on Twitter, obviously as well, thankfully for him.
Sure.
The rest of his team was showing up, but in that game.
Okay, Vizichachi, just want to say, Vizichachi, I've been kind to you up to now, but like you have more in games, and I'm just gonna call for like bring White Knight back, alright? Yeah. My homeboy White Knight didn't deserve this, right?
Yeah.
Also, just quick point of clarification before we move on from Astralis.
Sure.
I didn't have any involvement with his recruitment or dealings or give any advice based on him, but Jeonghun is a part of one of the agencies I consult for. Yeah. So he technically has paid part of my salary at some point. But I wasn't involved with it at all, but still, just point of clarification.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you already clarified that. I think in the rankings episode, I think you did mention it. But
there'll be new people watching.
Yeah,
we'll just put some stuff in the description if you ever want to. Actually, maybe that's better.
I'm not gonna put it in the description if people want to watch everything.
Fuck it, guys! All my potential COIs are in the tier list. Go watch that.
Yeah, he mentioned them all. So we don't have to do this every episode again.
I am ethical and drunk.
Right. Well, we jumped from Mad Lions to quickly to BDS because you wanted to talk about BDS, and then we ended up talking about Astralis. I'm gonna bring it back to the Mad Lions, who brought in Niski in the split, and should have gone 3-0. Ended up going 2-1 because Malrang and Comp ran at an Elder Drake, somehow secured it, and Rogue ended up winning the team fight and just ended the game right there. But I mean, if Niski was supposed to fix Mad Lions, I think this weekend couldn't have been a better argument in favor of, okay, at least the team, there's plenty of bandages wrapped around this, and this team is walking again, if not already warming up to start running.
Wow, what a metaphor, actually. Yeah, I mean,
I should do something with words, like writing or something.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Could be good. Could be a good shout. I mean, so for me, first off, wins against teams like SK don't count right now for me.
Sure.
The reasons why they won against SK aren't going to be that interesting. The reasons that they won against Vitality are kind of interesting, but a bit more on the Vitality side. And they should have beaten Rogue, but we've gone over like a lot of Rogue's current issues, right? Yeah. I think Mad's best point in the game right now is mid-game. Mm-hmm. They're the only team that consistently understands that you don't just send like 5 people in lane and then go off, or send everyone in river and then drop someone in lane. Yep. You do both at the same time, and this gives you exit routes on either side, right? And they're consistently doing that, and then the other team is either a bit off resets or all-ins on one or the other, and I apes about it, which is weird because Mad are the ones with the Wukong priority. And as a result, Mad Lions just end up winning through good fundamentals. Now, that's interesting because it wasn't decided by Niski doing the Doinby cosplay everywhere. There were fights that were decided by Niski doing Doinby cosplay. I remember Alfari all-inning as Sedge versus Ornn, which is already weird to me. We obviously didn't see how that fight went out, but I just assume it ended up being W for Q on top side, and then Alfari was like, shit. But that also was influenced by Silas doing a Doinby cosplay to top side on the one wave of priority who's going to feasibly get in that lane, right? Silas into Azir is not a very bueno matchup. We're not likely to see him get his signature picks like TF for a bit, and he's lower priority in the draft, so we might not see his Doinby cosplay. But still, whenever we see those instances, his impact's immediately felt. However, that wasn't the defining one. The defining one for me is still just their fundamentals in mid-game and in rotating around the map are just so much more solid. Vitality, we're in a situation where almost every rotation they made, someone would be cut off. But Mad Lions rotations didn't allow for that. And I really like that about them. And that's also why they were doing so well against Rogue that we discussed beforehand. We're having a very, very similar issue, right? There were too many people not involved in the immediate play that they were about to make. You know, Mad, they just don't have that issue. Smart team for simple reasons, but, you know, the simples aren't seemingly very well understood by a lot of teams. So, yeah. I like them as a 5-man unit.
Yeah, it's one of the things where, for me, watching it, even though they obviously have very gifted players, Kaiser and Elyoya on their, Niski has proven himself, but and Unforgiven had a good rookie split, and Armut has shown that at least in games that matter, he can show up. So for me, I didn't expect at this point this team to already be as great of a sum as their parts as they were, if that makes sense. I think they really showed me, okay, that something changed within this team, that just put like glued them together. Which is something that we just didn't see a whole lot in spring. And I'm not sure if that's Niski or if just, overall as a team, they had a bit of a reset after spring or something like that. But that was definitely what impressed me. And also, what I liked about Mad Lions was that they seemed to understand very well, maybe not individually where their strengths are, but as a team, how they should navigate in order to get the advantage. And maybe that's something you were also referring to in terms of what they were cutting off in rotations. But that is something that struck me as well, that they understood, okay, we're at this point in the game, this is the state, these are our champions, this is what we have to do.
Can you show my screen actually?
Yeah,
because I think this is the big defining difference between them and Vitality as well. Wait, why is everything low quality again? Let me
all good.
Let me throw this up. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, we're all good. Because here, for example, here you could go and grab the bouncing wave now on bot lane tier 1. I think Armut should already be rotating towards midsection no matter what, right? I think you should take this. So I can't just show with my mouse, which is a bit annoying. Maybe I'll actually have to download Epic Pen at some point.
That's fine.
I think you should always path here towards the mid lane and then down towards where blue buff is, basically, and around that to catch this wave, just in case a play happens in mid. But what he does here is he paths a bit of a different way. But either way, he ends up pathing towards them. The point is, though, the whole time that he's not grouped with them, these guys aren't trying to go for an engaged pick. Yeah. They aren't even crossing this line at all. Even though Silas could be threatened, they know that there's a potential area where they can get picked here. So Unforgiven checks that with his abilities, but doesn't move up there. Wukong stays within this line. They all stay within those lines and see territory until they are grouped and they know they can do something. And contrast this with the other games we've seen where Ornn is still top side, even though you've given some reprieve, he hasn't moved in yet, and Malong's going in now, not just Rogue, obviously. We've talked about other teams that have this. And in this scenario, Vitality are the same thing. So look, Vitality go through River and then they drop Azir onto mid, but now they lean their whole team towards top. How does Azir get in here? If Mad Lions play properly, which they are, right, then if Azir tries to flank, Mad will just collapse on the Azir, right? Now, no matter what, you're going to be at a numbers disadvantage unless one of Mad Lions gets greedy. And all they do here is just not get greedy. They wait for the Ornn, they start moving up, and now the whole play has to happen away from Perks. Yes, he missed on Elyoya here, but the play has to happen away from Perks here. So no matter what, things are going to go badly. This is an easy numbers advantage that they've got themselves because they isolated Perks. Unforgiven even kept pushing Perks up so that Perks had to stay in mid and couldn't join the grouping. And just by waiting for Armor, right, making sure they are grouped before they do a play, they end up getting full control back, right? And they don't even lose out on that bot side wave. This is a really simple thing, but there are so many other teams where they may have made a play that would have given Vitality a significant advantage, right? Yep. And it's in these areas that I'm most impressed by Mad Lions. And the whole game goes like that until most of Vitality's game is basically they keep making plays before Perks is there, and then as a result they lose. Mad just don't have these kinds of obvious flaws we'll talk about. And it's in these instances, which you'll never see this in a montage, but it's in these points where I think the most about them. This is the difference between Mad and the other teams, and why they, for me, look like the strongest team coming into the first week.
You thought they were the strongest team overall?
Yeah, they strongest fundamental wise for sure. Like it was them. G2 were very, very aggressive. And I liked watching them play.
Yeah,
but I thought
they were more the skill
like
check team.
yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, there's a lot to be said about skill checking. If you're in a best of 5, right, and you've been stuck there playing League of Legends Clash of Fates for 4 hours straight, and fucking enemy locks in Yone, Yasuo, Senna, and just starts all-ing you over and over again. At some point, you go back. You know what? Fuck it. Just take it. I don't care anymore. I want to go home. There's a lot to be said for that. So, but fundamentally, like as an objective. In game, you're doing the correct things. I really like Mad Lions right now. That's my team. If I was going to show VOD reviews on how to play League fundamentally, I'd show them Mad VOD reviews from the split. Not G2 ones.
Yeah, and I think also because I don't want to harp them too much on they should have won that final game, but they should have, and they
should have won. Yeah, they should have.
They should have won.
But then they got skill checked, boys. Boom again
by Malron Volibear. Just
what
running in there. What are you gonna do about this Volibear? Nothing.
He is the storm. Come on, man.
So yeah, I think for me as well, I'm just very positive about Mad Lions. I did think heading into the split that they would perform better than last split, and this is already showing a great sign of that. Anything else?
No MSI to burn out from. So
yeah. No MSI to burn out. In fact, it actually looked like Rogue burned out from MSI, and they didn't even play there. So
exactly, mind blowing. Actually,
mind blowing how that can work. Yeah, I mean we've had half of the team so far. We just mentioned Vitality already because they played against Mad Lions. I
love Vitality. Well, okay. Well, I love to talk about Vitality.
Sure. Who doesn't? Because either you're at least last split was like either you're for the super team or you're against the super team. Ultimately, those against the super team concept got proven right. But now, they obviously brought in Haru as their jungler, and from what we heard from broadcast, I think was that it's very League of Legends communication in terms of how he can communicate with his English level. It's okay. He can communicate, and with pings and stuff like this, things are being figured out. Still, I would say that there have been glimpses of where I thought, okay, this Vitality is very coordinated. But at other times, I've also felt like this is just the same Vitality that I saw last split in terms of good players playing League of Legends together, if that makes sense.
So, okay, so two things. One, I love the contrast between what the broadcast says about Haru versus what ERL Twitter says about Haru. It's so contrasted, it's just funny. They're watching two completely different players, and the people who watch the ERLs are generally correct. Haru was pretty significantly overrated. He's an aggressive player in terms of counter jungling, but he doesn't even do those on like optimal timings. And these are things you can get away with at an ERL level because you can skill check a lot, which you can't necessarily do here. For me, I was on board with the super team idea so long as they gave it full 2 splits. They haven't. Selfmade was a big part of why that super team could actually work, but they just booted him. So now I'm not going to get to see what I thought I could see in summer. I thought summer they could actually even take the whole thing. So I'm pretty RIP about it.
Yeah.
Now Alfari, I loved his performance because you felt his impact the most in team fights. And I was the only guy who was saying that I thought his laning phase was actually suffering a bit, but you could actually see his impact in team fights. And even in like the Sejuani game, where still obviously he had that deft top sides to Silas and Ornn, still, he was the guy engaging at the Herald that won them the initial contest. He was the guy finding the engagements, the only person actually doing anything on his team for that. And any successes they had were down to him there. On his Ornn game, can't remember who it was Misfits, right? He had this ridiculously good... So the teleport itself was a bit weird. His repositioning... Yes, his repositioning into like a 4-man Ornn was so sick. Like, he was so good in all these team fights. He basically won them the game with that. Now, the composition there's also really good around the Ornn. But his positioning was so good in these fights to set up these engages, and you felt like he was getting contested in laning phase, right? I don't understand why people are obsessed with Sejuani into Ornn, by the way, just
Oh,
as an aside.
can I just say,
Yeah,
please
go for it.
stop playing Sejuani top. It's not only is it just like fucking boring. You know, I don't mind watching a top lane. I think it's sometimes pretty skill intense. Obviously, you have very more dull matchups, but generally, I could quite respect just seeing two top laners. It's like putting on lo-fi music. You know, you're just watching it. You're just chilling. You're watching them go at it while the rest of the map burns down. But Sejuani, I hate this champion so much, and it's not even been very successful.
Ornn favored, by the way. Like, Ornn should beat Sejuani in lane. Like, you should just be able to W her CC.
Yeah.
And E her R. Like, I don't know why people are so obsessed with this. This should actually be a fine lane for Ornn.
Yeah, so I just don't get it. I think, let me look up the stats actually. She's been played twice, so it's not too much yet. It's fine, but we've also seen it in other regions, like Sejuani being picked. Just don't do it, please.
Yeah. They were both into Alphari, by the way. Irrelevant picked Sejuani into his Ornn, no? Although, yeah, Alphari picks it into Ornn, and then Irrelevant picks Sejuani into Ornn against Alphari's Ornn.
Yeah, it's just, yes, please, I don't understand. And I saw a tweet from Chakras, and he was legitimately wondering, why are people picking it? There must be something that's better,
Well,
right?
I mean, I assume it's because of the durability changes.
Yeah.
That people are picking it, but they're also just going then full tank builds with it. So I don't know, because like I think durability change benefits Malphite, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's partly because you can actually build more damage on Malphite now and just rely on the base armor.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of stuff. But they're not really doing that with Sedge. I don't know. Apparently, it is picked in other regions. I don't watch other regions. So maybe there's a large element of their picking it. Maybe we should pick it too. But yeah, no, I think this particular matchup, I don't know why it keeps happening, because Sedge is not a counter pick, it's the other way around. That's my issue with that matchup.
Yeah.
God damn, what was I saying? So Alphari was Alphari's team fighting really well. Yeah, no, like anybody who behaves as if this is like a change from last time, then like I guess it's just a fucking wild coincidence that there were people who could call that this was how Alphari was actually playing last time. Like, you go back to last split, and it was very similar. He just wasn't on champions that were as impactful in those teamfight scenarios, but he was still very good at setting it up. Now, in terms of where Vitality are going wrong, one is that over eagerness to engage. They're not doing it like BDS do, where BDS just like, even if they burned every ultimate on the planet, they will still go for that trade. You know, like, who fucking cares? Like, it's not like that. Like, for them, they try to get picks in enemy jungle, but they seem to not keep good enough track of numbers, or are just too desperate to force the fight now, that someone will always be away from them. Whether it's Alphari sometimes, or whether it's Perk sometimes. Generally, it's those two guys, actually. Those are at least the instances I'm thinking of in my head. It's those guys. That seems to be what happens. They keep engaging away from a critical carry at some point. Kazi also seems to have pretty significant Sven syndrome, and just all in on mid lane sometimes when they're in a map split scenario without waiting for one of the two aforementioned people to be grouped. This seems to be their biggest issue. They seem to be over eager to take fights, take picks. They seem to think that you can just one-shot people now, but you really can't. And yeah, for me, that's the big Vitality issue. They can make up for it in drafts sometimes. Like, it was Yuumi, Ezreal, Corki, and Ornn, right? So like Yuumi with a lot of champions up. That is good synergy of them. Yep. Technically, the draft was really easy to counter for their opponents, but it allowed them to play as aggressive as they wanted. So that was a good enabler for them. But I think if you get them off of champions that allow them to trade HP in bad scenarios, then basically healing champions, then I think their issues just lose them games, right? So I think that's the name of the game right now against Vitality. Yeah. And until they fix that, they'll struggle.
Yeah, also should be noted that the two wins that they did get were against Misfits, who's 0-3, and BDS, who's 0-3. So at this point, they haven't really been tested or like won against a team that's been
oh yeah, for sure.
Up there yet, you know, but it's probably better, at least for their confidence and for the for the morale, than going 0-3 in the opening split when you had these high expectations. So yeah, I think it's kind of the same with I had with Astralis. It's like, okay, yes, you've won, but can you actually see what went wrong in the games, even though you won them, and adapt and learn from that as you go on? Because that is something that we just didn't see a whole lot of in spring. It wasn't a team that developed much, if anything, as a team. And that is still where I would say, okay, Vitality. Well, let me actually look up who they're playing next weekend. They're playing.
That Misfits draft blew my mind a bit, by the way.
Well, they're playing against Excel next week and G2. So 2 teams that have been performing.
G2 especially. I'm gonna skill check them.
Have been looking much better than Misfits and BDS. So that will be a real test for this Vitality lineup.
Oh, Excel are a really good team to pivot to. Actually, Dave looks phenomenal. Actually, I forgot about them. Maybe they can test Mad Lions on fundamentals.
Okay.
But in a different aspect of the game, I really like their swap scenarios. So their Twitch game, right? Where they played Twitch Yumi into Misfits. Yeah, it was into Misfits. Their utilization of Twitch towards midsection and where they were placing Nuke Duck on the map with Unsealed Spellbook, I really liked those setups. They were very difficult for their opponents to break and basically netted them full control of. Initially, it was a Herald swap, and then the second swap was for Drake. I really liked how they were dancing around the lanes for that. I also think just mechanically, Patrick's looked incredibly good.
Yeah.
No reservations about where I place him on the list. I think I put him S tier now. There was a fight against Fnatic when he was on Callista, where he just completely, Hiller sang into that fight as well, but he completely smurfed on them. He flashed away from Draven towards bot side, and then he kept moving through the minions to make it as hard as humanly possible to be hit by anything else on the side of Fnatic. And just this decision making that one team fight was so nice. It was on bot side. Hiller sang walked away as Razork went in and then had to flash back in and then hooked and I'm sorry guys, but Hillsang on Nautilus just gives me PTSD because every time he picks this champ,
let's stick with Excel before.
No, it goes so. Oh my days. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but yeah, no. So on Excel, Patrick's performing really, really well. Their lane setups when it comes to swap scenarios for objectives are so well done, and it's the year of the duck.
Oh, it's the year of the duck, actually. Okay.
Well, it's always the year of the duck.
It's always the year of the duck.
Well, we've guaranteed that now because even if it's not Nuke Duck's year, it's gonna be Flacket's stuff. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Veteran is saying put all your money on Excel versus G2 final of the Summer Split.
Remortgage the house. Don't tell your wife.
Don't tell her. Yeah. It's League of Legends. Who has a wife, really? So we started off.
Put your son's college fund.
What? Well, they started off with this incredibly dominant game against Misfits, right? Where Misfits didn't even get a kill, which was in ways, depending on how you looked at it, was either tragic or magnificent.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was Misfits couldn't really do anything in this game. I literally in my notebook I have just 3 lines where Excel had that early gank mid where there was a team fight between the 2 mid jungles, and it was actually Misfits.
No, they didn't even early gank it, by the way. Wait, can I? So we'll still talk about Excel.
Pull up the clip. I'll just talk through it. But it was an early. Yeah. So it was Volibear for Marcoon, and it was a Twisted Fate for Nuke Duck against the Viego and the Orianna on Misfits side. And what should have been at least a kill for Misfits ended up being a 2-0 trade for Excel, where first Nuke Duck sidestepped everything and flashed to the side, which allowed to Marcoon to get in.
Yeah.
And then Marcoon retreated, and
Are you showing my screen?
I'll show you a screen now. Yeah.
Because so I just want to say, there's a large amount of Misfits copium by Misfits fans right now. Okay, teams are not camping VTO. Okay, and this wasn't even a gank. All right. So Schlatten is behind on clear. Well, kind of behind on. Yeah, no, he is behind on clear to Volibear. So he enters River last. Right. He's on a ward here. Okay, moves up. Tries to grab it, fails to grab it. So now Marcoon thinks, okay, I can double scuttle him. That's what he's doing right now. He has no actual intention of ganking VTO, just wants to double scuttle. VTO moves up, maybe a bit far, but he moves up, right? And now all that's going to happen, Shatman's going to go up, right? And Markoon's going to go up towards double scuttle. That's what's going to happen. Look at Markoon's clicks, right? Like, is this a guy going on VTO? No, he's going away. Schlatten, on the other hand, is like, you know what, boys? It's go time. It's go time, lads. It's go time, lads. All right? And he goes in, and Markoon's like, really? And Snoop Dogg's like, really? And now Snoop Dogg just flexes, okay? Because he is the alpha and the omega, right? And then VTO dies with flash up. But like, this was Misfits opting into it, and Misfits in the next game as well opt into it. Yeah, Schlatten opting into it. Like, it's basically jungle mid instance. Like, Misfits next game as well, it's Victor and Viego, I think it is, and Victor goes for like the weirdest flank around blue buff. And ends up having to flash the other side of blue buff and just gets knocked up by Ornn, and they get engaged on. And it's like mid-jungle offered themselves again. No one's camping your team. They start diving your boy after they're already heavily behind, okay? Yep. They're not camping mid. These guys, there's just a lot of mid-jungle incidents happening with Misfits right now, right? Yeah. And Excel's giving them the thumbs up, but they didn't engage this. Like, I'm sorry, I just saw too many Reddit and Twitter comments of being like, oh wow, teams have figured out you just have to camp Misfits mid lane and now the rest of the map can't do shit. Not even what's happening. That's not even vaguely what's happening, and it blows my mind.
I think though, like watching that specific game between Excel and Misfits, that game was over there. Like
it was over there, so I actually live turned it off.
Yeah, but it was over there, but then it was really over when Excel went for like a bot dive a bit later on. They got even more kills, and that's all I had like in my notes as well. Like there was a fight mid, Excel went for a play bot, Misfits overstay their welcome and feed Excel more kills, and then it was just over. Yeah. There was nothing Misfits could do in the rest of this game.
So I agree with you, but this is where I was talking about their lane assignments, right? Because so I'm going to be completely real. So I watched the game live, but I wasn't streaming at the time, so I just turned the game off. But I obviously rewatched it in prep for the show, and I really loved how they started swapping here. So this is normal Herald swap for topside is what you try to do now. So normally you would just recall and send your support maybe towards Herald over here, and maybe send your bot lane bot to capture the wave or something on the good wave, right? Because the whole wave should bounce back into them, unless they want to trade a lot of HP to hold it, in which case if they do, then they're obviously not going to go and play for Herald, and in which case it'll be fine. But what they end up doing is they recall, and this is kind of Twitch Yumi specific. I really love when I see Twitches lean towards mid lane so much. For any of you who have really good memory, Season 4 Tabs was doing this a lot, and he basically was the map control for Alliance at that point. But here, they synchronize the mid lane and bot lane recalls, and they send Nuke Duck down bot to catch this wave, so you lose 0 economy whatsoever, and maintain man advantage towards topside. Again, this isn't a play on VTO, this is a Herald swap. And then later in the game, they do it again, have to hit J button. So they end up using that Twitch on midsection to try to do a play towards topside. Move forward. And that play topside, on that bounce back, they reset Twitch, send TF topside to capture, and put Twitch back towards midsection. And now Twitch is there for this Drake play as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I really like these swaps they're doing. They're very creative. And they're much more all-in than you're used to seeing for Herald or Drake swaps.
Yeah.
So this creativity I loved seeing from them.
Is it something, if you look back at the Spring Split, Excel was already learning to do? Or is it something you think, because they did do a bootcamp in South Korea, and I did an interview with Nukduk about it, and they said basically they played T1, EDG, RNG, they got beaten around or like in scrims by those teams. Do you think that is something that they've massively improved on compared to what they did?
So the usual analyst line would be to bullshit that maybe I guess they could have been developing at that point, but I don't really remember. But I actually just don't remember their map movements last split well enough to tell you if this was something they were leaning into. I will tell you a lot of these things are things I think are Twitch specific. It's just really nice to see a team that picks Twitch and plays to its strengths this heavily, right? Wow, Relevant's actually getting a decent... Oh, no, we only get one.
Yeah, that was actually... Because I saw this clip and I don't remember... Because I think I was thinking back to... was it Agressivo who was... Yeah, I think I said it was Agressivo who tried to go for a Gnar hop flash ult.
Sure.
But it was actually Agresivo, yeah. Both new top laners, so forgive me for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's irrelevant here. That's
yeah, it was irrelevant who was going for that play.
Wait, irrelevant stunned two of them though, no?
No, one.
Or am I
I
blind?
think he got one.
Well, I'm seeing stunned above Volibear, stunned above
Yeah, but oh no, but I mean
Gwen.
with the ult itself he hit one, and then
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
W he hit more. Yeah.
Sure.
Um,
But yeah,
but yeah,
no,
so
but
Excel in terms of Excel's improvement,
I mean, map movement wise, I did not remember anything
mhm,
last split where I was like really enamored by it. Right?
yeah,
Last split, I really enjoyed watching Nuke Duck, and now I'm thinking 2 splits ago actually.
mhm,
So yeah, no, I don't remember anything last split where I really enjoyed their map movements on a level like this.
sure,
Right? A lot of it was mostly about Mickey X started
yeah,
getting really good picks for them. I remember being impressed by Finn, but general 5-man concepts like this, not
mhm,
so much. But these were so cleanly done. Obviously, they're playing against a team that offered very little resistance because they just gave up mid in
yeah,
3 minutes.
mhm,
But it was really nice to see, and I hope to see more things like this from them.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, for me, just thinking back, I mean, it was something that Excel improved on setting up objectives over the course of the split, and that is something that you could see. But now
yeah.
this is just it feels like this team actually just understands at all points, similar maybe to yeah. Well, you also drew a comparison maybe to Mad Lions and their understanding of what to do. I think this Excel lineup is so much better now at knowing, okay, this is where we are in the game. This is what the enemy is going to do. We have. I think at some points I would maybe like them to push their advantages a little bit more, but in the end, I think this team is just looking solid, and I'm pretty impressed about them so far. If I look at who they play next week, though, it's gonna be Vitality, and it's gonna be let's
So
see, Mad
one,
Lions actually next week. So that's gonna be
yeah.
a good one.
So one thing I'd be a bit worried about with Excel is that they seem quite dependent on TF right now. Otherwise, like the game where they didn't have TF, they had GP and Lissandra. And
Mm-hmm.
for that, like I definitely didn't pick up on their mid-late game having the kind of grouping discipline that Mad Lions did. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of it was they understood they could start this fight, but TF could port in, Lissandra could go over the wall, Gangplank could be present with his ultimate, like
Yeah.
these kinds of things. So
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder if you target global champions on Nuke Duck, if they do look as strong.
He
You
does.
know?
He has said that he really likes to play those roaming champions a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, these are champs that allow them to kind of start fights off tempo in a
Mm-hmm.
way that like Vitality etc. do, and yet
Yep.
he's still there. And I've seen these global dependent teams before. Fnatic 2018 were a very big one of them, where
Mm-hmm.
they're almost dependent on Nocturne TF,
Yeah.
right? I remember that. So yeah, that's my worry. I don't view their map movements like I view Mads. I
Yeah.
think that with the champions they have, they're good, but I don't know that they don't just make those
Yeah.
decisions out of those champions. You know?
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about other teams, like I think Caps is also a player very notorious for like wanting to roam. I was immediately thinking of FPX actually, who is like, okay, DoMB likes to just push in his lane and go somewhere and see what happens.
Mm.
But
Yeah, but he'd also do that on champs like Nautilus that don't
yeah.
have the
No.
ability of TF to
He
just
was
be there,
he
you
was
know?
just
Yeah.
the like the extreme
Yeah.
case of
Like Galio would be another example I'd
mhm.
think of where like you could start a fight away from him and still be able to be there, you know? Like these
Talia.
kinds of things.
Hello, Talia. Let's go.
Talia's a yeah, where's the Talia
I
priority?
have
She's
no
actually
clue.
really good. Talia into like the Yasuo Young composition, actually. What the fuck? Why aren't you just locking in Talia there? Holy lord, what can they do? Can
Yeah.
they breathe even? Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see.
That's a weird champ that's just out the pool.
Sure. We have I think 3 teams left at this point. We now with Excel versus Fnatic. We did talk a bit about Fnatic. I don't know if you have a lot to say about Fnatic. For me, this was a team that had very clear issues still. I mean, they went 2-1, and I think again in their game against Excel especially, it just felt like this team was not on the same page. It was Hillesing on offense, as you pointed out earlier, was not
Yes.
was not the best showing.
That
All
game
things
was so
considered.
depressing, actually. Yeah, that game was so
Yeah.
depressing.
But I think that it was Fnatic in that game against Excel. They were really desperately trying to find an angle to tackle Excel, but they just couldn't because it felt like Excel just understood better. Okay, Fnatic is gonna they are gonna try for this, so we just either peel off or we're just better in the fight and we get a pick on them and then use that to a further advantage. Whereas Fnatic felt a bit more uncoordinated. But in other games, I did think Reznor was actually playing pretty well, and
Yes, he was.
yeah, well, pick up on that then. So maybe Fnatic as a whole, or Reznor, wherever you wanna take it.
I mean, Razork was definitely not playing efficient jungling, but he was able to read his opposing jungler quite well
Yeah.
and was able to match him on all sides of the map. The biggest issue was his lack of synergy of Hylissang, but I don't put that on him, right? Like
It takes
that
two to
fight
tango.
that
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like that fight where Patrick smurfed. Like, also the other side of it is that Razork went in on a really good opportunity, and for some weird reason, Hylissang is just walking away for no reason, right? So maybe if you have Hylissang on something he's really comfortable playing heavily aggressive on, then maybe he'll actually understand that Razork's going in on good opportunities. Because that was really painful, because Razork was like 4-2 at that point when no one else had a kill. You know? Outside of those two, Wanda's been playing well.
Yep.
I actually have really liked Wanda. And I love their Draven priority. Draven's absolutely a champion that counters the things they think it counters. It does counter Kalista, it is good into Ezreal, and it's good for their playstyle, which is very heavily about them hard camping for bot side.
Yeah.
Right? So I think their drafts are good. I just think this one particular aspect, which is the synergy between jungle support, is what's messing them up in mid-late game. And then once they fix that, then I am again worried, like I always am, that maybe this team is almost too binary and is quite easy to figure out, right? Once you understand how to match their bot side or play around that bot side priority that they have, they don't look like the same team at all. If Upset isn't steamrolling ahead, it's quite difficult for them to play because of how much priority they put on it. Any advantages, Wanda gets almost solo.
Yeah.
Same with Humanoid.
I think, Humanoid is a player who can play, who you can play around if you want to. At this point, I don't.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's just for me, I would rather see Fnatic maybe perfect this style first because there's still some issues like clearly here before trying to shift things around. Rather than maybe trying to clean up two things at the same time when you haven't even cleaned up the first one yet, where you're lacking fundamentals as a team. So I would like to see that. Overall, I think this is a Fnatic that's, if I think back to how they started the Spring Split, they clearly did look better than how they started the Spring Split, because even though they went 3-0 in the opening week of the Spring Split, I was looking at this like, okay, but this is just a team that is, I guess, stumbling across the finish line in some of these games where it's individual outplays that matter most. And I do see more of the team play now, but it does feel like compared to where Fnatic was towards the end of the Spring Split, where they were contesting for that first spot with Rogue, actually, this is a team that has taken a step back, and I wouldn't say they're as bad as they looked when they got 0-3'd by G2, because that was actually a shambles and maybe just completely mental, how do you say that, implosion from them there. So it's a bit better than that, but I still see this as a team that needs to develop a lot, because even in their victories, I wouldn't say they were super dominant overall.
I mean, they weren't. Like their last win was because Corki scaled to the point where one big red one just suddenly half helps 3 members of your team. That was SK Gaming, right? And it was SK Gaming that they were struggling against, right? So yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I was somewhat thinking like, nah, they were definitely stronger last split on their 3-0. Because they weren't struggling against SK Gaming and relying on Kel Corki scaling at that point, right? Like, it's not like, nah. Like, I definitely disagree with you on that point, for sure. We're talking more about what team issues they could fix
Sure.
Part of that, though, is also because on an individual level, we haven't seen as many outplays as we used to from them. And I'm not sure that's better. Because then that ended with them like struggling against SK. It was SK, right?
I mean, so
They had the Kel Corky game into.
they had, it was, I think, the final day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the final day.
Kill, Corki, Wukong, Rakan, and
Yeah,
Tristana.
that was. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah. So I mean, but in fairness, that was entirely SK's fault for just ignoring Humanoid for so long and letting him scale as much as he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm the reason I guess I'm not worried about them is that I don't feel like they could do anything but attempt to improve from this week. There's no instances like last split where they could maybe get cocky about it and stymie a little. There's clearly things to look at and clearly things to improve on. And I don't think any individual player there is going to be able to, though I'm sure some will try, to just absolve themselves of what happened this week, right? Of the struggles that they had. So hopefully they work on it as 5. But yeah, I guess we'll see. I'm not as high on them as I was last split. I thought even without seeing this week, well, admittedly, I was thinking Vitality would have self-made, but my initial prediction at the start of the year was that Fnatic could win Spring, and then Vitality would win Summer. Obviously, Fnatic did not end up winning Spring, and Vitality aren't Vitality anymore.
Yeah.
So either way, I wasn't expecting them to be able to carry heavily through in Summer anyway. But they're in a better position to learn than they were before, I guess. That's the positive I'll say about them. Just stop picking Nautilus for Hylissang. He won't learn the champ. He can't do it. He has to go in. He has to go in, or he just can't think. I don't know what's going on here, to be honest with him. That champion is just a curse for him. It brings out the worst.
I mean, if you think about like his Spike is obviously very good, and
his
Rakan, aside from the time where he dove for some reason under the tower when there was nobody there, tanked 3 turret shots and had to flash the Ezreal ult, and then died to the GP ult, which actually was in this game. And yeah. I think it's like those champions are where you can go in, but also have a clear way out, and that's something you don't really have with the Nautilus. I mean, we'll see with this Fnatic lineup. For me, I am optimistic about this lineup, and also improving. But it has to be clear for me. Fix this style first, and then go try other things, because you can play around.
I don't think they'll ever try other things, which is a real shame, because Razork in the current meta would be unbelievable if they actually played around him. Like Graves, Karthus, Kindred, Lilia. Imagine they just play farming jungle and play jungle. I think with Humanoid as well. Oh my days, man.
Well, Fnatic likes to wants to give Upset the resources, and that's how they play for now.
Yeah. Good distinction.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Which what are the last 2 teams left?
We have Misfits and SK. SK could have gone 0-3 if it were not for BDS fumbling that. Misfits went 0-3. So I think for SK, you said it a bit before we started recording as well, there's not much to say about them. They're not super exciting to watch overall. They're also, I don't know. There's a lot for them to improve on. I don't want to linger too long on those two.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather veto talking about SK if entirely possible, and go on to Misfits. Like, I'll be real, I don't think about SK much at all. They aren't even doing step 1. Like, there was so many, like the double kill Xmati got on bot lane was purely because Treats isn't even R-ing before he Qs. You know, like basic shit like this is escaping them at this point. So it's like, what's gonna happen? But like, pretty much flame. Their issues aren't synergy or anything like this. They need to just get better at the game. Misfits, on the other hand, I mean, I guess we already kind of talked about it, but like, there's obviously a lot of people claiming that, you know, they're just getting camped on mid, but the reality of the situation is that they don't really understand how to play a proactive mid jungle. They didn't know that last split either. VTO was never a very proactive mid laner, but you could play these champions like Jinx, etc., that will auto win you the game at like 20, 25, 30 minutes, right? And that's what they were doing. Like, remember, Misfits wins were comebacks.
Mm-hmm.
Misfits wins were massive comebacks.
Yeah.
That's not really possible now. There isn't really, maybe Kel, a champion where you just wait 25 to 30 minutes and the game is won. That doesn't really exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's partly because of the durability changes. And given this, the playstyle that was winning them games last split doesn't exist anymore. You are seeing the same things you saw last split, you're just not seeing the same endings.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing with Misfits now is that they get their mistakes get punished more clearly. That and what you said as well, like there was a comeback mechanic, but I don't even feel like even if they had comeback mechanics or like there were comeback potentials, I should say, on this patch, I don't feel that this Misfits would capitalize on those because they are put behind so far already in the early stages where it's not just
Yeah.
Veteo overstepping or whatever. It's just as a team they don't seem to understand what's gonna happen next in the game, and then they die for it or they get a disadvantage for it, and then it's just them being driven back into a corner every waking minute.
I mean, two things I'll say to that then. So one is that I don't think they understood last split either. Teams that are consistently making comebacks around the Nexus are not in the position of understanding this, right? And the second thing that I would say is that if the meta did have these kinds of also win at 25, 30-minute champions, everybody else would also be playing them, and that mattered a lot. People weren't playing heavy acceleration, heavy group, early skirmish champions into Misfits last split because that wasn't how you won the game. Everyone was contesting the Jinx. They were going with Unisari. They were doing all of these kinds of scaling things as well. If we had those comeback mechanics in the meta would also shift around them, and Misfits wouldn't be as pressured as they are right now in the earlier phases of the game. I do think you are essentially seeing the same thing that we saw last split, just because the ending's different. People generally overwrite people's splits, and I'm worried that Misfits also did that when it came to playoffs, because in playoffs they started picking like Xayah, these kinds of mid-game champions, and just not accepting that they were a late-game scaling team fighting team. That's always been their forte. They're late-game team fighters. They're not map-based people. Like, Schlatten is not a map-based jungler. Vito is not a map-based. He's not Nisky, These guys have never been these early-game players that understand these map-based concepts. And they should have leaned into that in their playoffs last split. And now that playstyle's not even possible. They're not ready for it. And yeah, no one gets to overwrite it in their heads anymore. For me, that's it. And the thing is, we've already gone over it, even with footage, like how these advantages are actually just Misfits mistakes, and not even like the enemy team's not even trying at this point against them. Irrelevant did have like a 3-0 game on Jax, and then they just couldn't play around it properly. They didn't seem to understand to play around those early advantages. And I do think Irrelevant Sejuani game, of course they lost that game, he was able to find some pretty good openings for them. In spite of that. Especially around bot lane, right? Ultimately right now I think Neon is very elo held. He hasn't collapsed like everyone else has. Irrelevant will obviously get too cocky at some point to start collapsing, but he's very, very new. But yeah, like I think right now it's a mid-jungle incident. They don't understand the map, and once they do understand the map, then the team can develop properly. I still am of the opinion Misfits should have sold VTO between splits, because he was never going to get more rated than that, So
I mean, but that's unlikely for them to do because they were banking on like it doing even better, and then
completely better than MVP and first all pro and
but
blah
I mean,
blah
like,
blah. Stock was as high as it can possibly
maybe
be.
carrying the team further, right? Because they ended up in 4th place, which is, I mean, if you think about it, one away from making worlds if you repeat it from in summer. So maybe they were banking on this.
That would suck because they'd be very delusional.
Maybe they also didn't get any good offers. We like any offers
Yeah.
that they would think this is.
I'm pretty sure it would be
this
that.
is worth Veteo, selling Veteo for at this point. What I will say from Misfits is that, aside from the notes you make, I really hope, but I'm scared that this 03 will impact the team even further, because if I saw just the mood overall on the team. Obviously, anybody that's going 0-3 is disappointed, and you want to do better, right? But it feels like this is a team that's gonna have take a while at least to find to break out of this and to
probably because of the manner, right, in which they went 0-3. Because you would expect it to be top lane being like he's the new guy, right? You'd expect it to be but it wasn't that. You know, it was actually mid jungle.
Yeah, so, and it's like okay. It feels like they came into the split. Okay, let's see what we're gonna bring this split. Maybe they also, I don't think any of them had the illusion that they would easily or like pull off the same result as that last spring, because I think everybody was surprised by that. But this was just they got demolished. It was they barely had a say in any of the games they played.
Yeah.
So for me, it's mostly for them. Are they going to be able to break out of this? And if so, how soon? And just say, okay, you know what? We completely whiffed the first week. Let's just go back to what we thought we knew. Redo this, and then start building throughout the spring split and setting maybe a new realistic goal for the rest of the split. Because based on what we've seen so far, that is something that needs to be done. Just readjusting your expectations and building towards them with and taking it one game at a time. We have seen, like, I think Misfits traditionally in summer isn't as good. Oh, well, actually, I say that, but last year they were one game off making Worlds, actually going 3-2 against Rogue in the upper bracket. But let's just say, I think heading into the split, many people thought they would drop off a bit in terms of performance compared to the rest. I think that you can still very realistically set an expectation for making playoffs with this team. It is possible, right? But it's all about now for me, it's all about resetting the mental, saying to the team, okay, guys, we screwed up. It happened. We go again next week. But from what I saw, like at least on their faces, it's like, whew, I've seen teams that went 0-2 or 0-3 in a week, and they were still just goofing around and fun. Yeah, it happens, and I wonder if they have the capability to develop that same mental, or if they have the same mental and show up next week with revitalized.
Revitalized.
Yeah, I mean,
there's another team that wants to do that too, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think that's the teams then. If we don't want to escape, not much to say about them further. I think it's just.
Also, be real. This is 5 minutes before my call time for the NA stuff.
All right.
So, yeah,
well, we do have to round up with one thing. We have to crown a best in the West. You can say which player you thought was the best in the West. There's a lot of players. Obviously, there's 50 of them. But it should be able to
narrow man.
So for me, I will start first, and while you
go for it.
For me, it's between actually Elyoya and Caps. I think Elyoya, the biggest thing you can say about him is that he didn't secure Elder Drake in the game against Rogue. But other than that, I think it was super solid all around. Actually, Niski might be in there as well in terms of how he played around the map with Melans. But for me, Elyoya overall was a super consistent all around. Knew where to be, when to be there, knew when to go in with his team, and knew when to leave his laners alone, as well as when to be with them. Caps is for me the argument is that he's not quite there where he was in like the finals against Rogue, that peak shape. But man, this guy was just he was having a fun time. You could see him dancing around. He was playing around well, assisted a lot by Jankos. Of course, he always is gonna be that, and also Targamas was of help a lot. But seeing Caps in that shape again made me smile. Just in a way that watching good League of Legends makes me smile. I'll say okay. I'm just gonna give it to Elyoya then, because yeah, screw it. Everything I just said, because I think to come into this opening weekend with these adjusted expectations for your team and to then actually perform as well is just huge props to them for me.
I'm gonna say Patrick. I think both in fights and around the map and in the 2v2, I think in all of those cases he showed significant improvements, especially on the map play aspect. Patrick used to be a guy who would just get caught in rotation a lot. And I mean, he was smurfing. I think the biggest highlight play for me was from Patrick this weekend. So I'd say him, and also shout out to Dejal for most improved. Though obviously, I think Caps is the best mid as well for sure. Like as you're saying.
Okay.
So
Cool.
yeah. Okay.
Well, that's the Best in the West episode 2 rounded up. Thank you everybody for watching. If you like this content, leave a comment below what you thought about the teams and how they played this. Who's your Best in the West player? We'd like to hear that as well. If you're gonna shit on veterans tier list, there's another episode you can watch back for that. That's fine.
Hey, I have to justify the least from my tier list.
Yeah.
Actually, how did we end up in the position where I also have to defend my my VTO rating?
Yeah. Oh well. We'll see how that plays out over the rest of the split. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode. And until then, stay tuned for more content.